It's like, hey, if you can run heavy equipment, like you probably put a food plot in,
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Dodge a ball. HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, we've been using Deer Grow products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there that helps the metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTR15 for 15% off any of the Deer Grow products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer. Hey, we're back.
Hey,
HUNTR Podcast, episode 245.
Yeah, buddy.
As Nick keeps us in line from South Carolina.
Yeah. Also keeping us in line on happy birthday to Jeremy.
Hey.
Yeah, 41. I'm glad he reminded me because I don't check Facebook. And
just another day.
It's not. I should put that in my calendar or something. But yeah, happy birthday.
I'm not a big birthday guy. Never have been. Just
yeah, it was because you're a grown man.
It's just another day.
An adult dude. So
Emily and the kids did get me a it was like, it's, you get to the age where it's like, don't surprise me. Like, here's what I want type of thing.
Right.
Is that how you operate?
Well, it's like if you buy something that I don't send you, it's like we're probably wasting money.
So one of the new Magnum steel blowers.
Leaf blower.
Yeah. Little fire action.
There you go.
Coming up in the near future.
Perfect.
Yeah. So.
Is that a backpack deal or a whole?
Yeah, backpack.
Nice.
Major horsepower.
That's what you need.
So yeah, that was my fire prevention in the near future.
Cool.
So
what do those run? Just curious.
$650.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think they're on sale. Is what she said. $650, $700, something like that. Yep. For the 800 cc one.
Yep. Nice.
Yep. So yeah, pretty stoked about that. That one's been
Are you still thinking, like, are you looking at next year at this point, or we're
nope.
kind of?
I'm gonna do some April burns
this year.
I mean, unfortunately, if you're listening to this, we just came through like a massive monsoon in a large part of the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic area. It's just gonna have to dry out a bit. We went from like don't burn to now we're saturated.
Yeah.
But
especially on your timber burns is what you're thinking, right? Yeah.
So it's I would say sometime in April, barring weather conditions play out, I'm going to try to just do some small timber burns and stuff like that. I might light one of my fields or something like that too, where I've got warm season grasses and stuff, but they're not big.
Boy, driving home from Illinois gives you a little wake-up call. We saw 2 different fires that got away from people that day.
It was dry.
Yeah.
She was dry and the wind.
Super windy.
Yeah. It was windy yesterday here, but yeah, out there, I mean, we were coming back. It was hard driving for a large portion of that coming back Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah, last Friday. And so, yeah, one was a corn stubble field, like torched, which if it's ripping through a corn stubble field like that, it's dry. The other one was like right in like the berm of the road, and like that wind was blowing so hard, like it was over like the slow lane.
They were both close enough to the road, especially that one that I wonder if they were just like
cigarettes or something.
Well, either cigarettes or just vehicle sparks or whatever.
So
I wonder how often that happens, just starting from traffic.
I bet a lot. Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah, something
It's
human
got to
related.
happen with like trains and stuff too, I would think. There's all kind of sparking going on with that.
I would assume so.
Interesting.
Yeah, but yeah, those were ripping with that wind. I mean, we saw several fire trucks trying to like get in front of it. I mean, I think it was moving because it was blowing like 40 plus miles an hour.
Gale force winds.
Yeah, she was fueled pretty strong at that point. Fortunately, like there wasn't really anywhere for it to go. Well, I don't know about the cornfield one, but the other one,
just a few houses.
Yeah, the other one didn't have anywhere
just
to go.
Just a small neighborhood.
So
playing children.
It was just going to a highway, I guess. But yeah, we saw. I think it was the small town hunting guys had like they burned a 4-wheeler.
Oh, dude.
I think they said, I thought they were prescribed burning. They weren't. They were driving around with the 4-wheeler and it backfired and caught the grasses on fire and it ended up taking over the whole field, including their 4-wheeler, and burned it all to the ground.
Like, dude, it's just like, can we not learn from like how many people have to do this for us to realize that, like, you know, first of all, it's like you're losing pieces of equipment. It's just like, get off your butt and walk it. And also, it just doesn't look good. I mean, it's a good way to lose the right for everybody, you know.
Well, that's why, like, for a lot of, you know, the area that we were in that fire ban for, like, I don't know, several weeks there in March, you know, just locked up. And in most states, Ohio has it, Kentucky has it, to where, like, you can't be burning basically until evening. Mm-hmm. I think Kentucky's goes out sometime in the next 2 weeks, but Ohio, you said it's all the time?
In Ohio?
The burn ban?
Well, until the evening hours, yeah. It's like 6 to 6.
But you can't burn, like in May, you can't burn during the day or something.
It opens up, I want to say, like later in the summer.
Okay.
Like June or July.
When you get real green.
I guess.
Yep.
Well, see, that's what I never understood. Like, it's not any less green. Maybe there's more fuel than like in the springtime. The spring is as green as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe there's just, well, see, but there would be more fuel, I would think, come those later summer months. I don't really understand
conditions,
that, to be honest, but
they probably just have then local ban restrictions if it's droughty or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm going to try some small timber burns and stuff and just mess around, just, you know, basically create rings with that blower and just slow timber burns inside of it. So yeah, but next year, yes, I would like to burn more fields. I just got my report from Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife that I need to go through and just go see what that looks like.
It's no joke, man. I mean, take it seriously when you're getting ready to do that. And when we get our guests on here, we can talk about some fire precautions and stuff. My neighbor died years ago, like when I was a kid.
Really?
He's burning the leaves in his backyard. Older guy. He was like in his 60s, I think 50s, 60s, probably 60s. Just died of smoke inhalation. Just got caught in the midst of like whatever he was doing there. It wasn't like a, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was leaves.
Even a big fire. It was just, you know, I think he was burning them out of the yard and some got away and I assume he was chasing them around I think smoke inhalation / I don't know.
Damn.
Heart attack or something, but.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean especially when you start talking about the fields and stuff and even the timber burns, I mean, you've got to take precautions there and make sure you've got good brakes and, you know, and really for a lot of those areas because of the fuel load and stuff we talk about, you know, just doing a lot of back burning just so it's slow and really consumes more of that fuel. You don't want it to go fast and just take the top layer off.
Right.
Yeah, so we've got a guest today. We got Adam Keith on from Land and Legacy, and that'd be cool to have Adam because obviously I know they do a ton of that stuff. And, you know, I think as we kind of talk about the habitat aspect of things, you know, it's interesting to see, and Adam and Matt have been on a ton of properties to go through and like how different the areas are from a management prescription. Even like we talk about our farms that are both in Ohio and it's two completely different farms. Like, you know, you're chasing creating cover, you know, from essentially nothing. I'm chasing creating food because I got cover. And it's those aspects that try to, you know, in your mind when you hear these different, you know, consultants online or podcasts or you read an article, whatever it is, trying to adapt that into what you're personally working with is sometimes difficult.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I'm super excited to talk to Adam because it's been probably a long time coming. Just overlap with, you know, you'll know Adam from Growing Deer previously, Land and Legacy, which they do plenty of productions with and through connected with Whitetail properties. And where did we find out?
More recently with the HUNTR stuff.
And the HUNTR, that's right. So
yeah, Glessinger
we had on. So Matt's involved with that in some way. So yeah, let's get him on and get going here.
We got you, Adam?
I'm here.
All right.
Rock and roll, baby.
Man, there's well, whether it's the sticks of Missouri and or the weather, we fought through some technical issues earlier.
Yeah, I don't know if it's over, but we're gonna give it our best.
Yeah, we'll make it work on this stuff. So, well, yeah, man, I don't know how bad it got in your neck of the woods, but like I saw at least last night I was watching, man, Arkansas got lit up with some tornadoes and into Tennessee, and yeah, it was a pretty rough night for a lot of people out there.
I've never seen a radar look like that. It was just red boxes everywhere.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Do you guys get tornadoes down there?
Oh yeah, yeah. Week or so ago, we had one went just west of me, and then like an hour later, another warning. I like threaded the needle,
Mm.
just east of me. So it gets kind of scary out here this time of year.
Yeah, it's wild.
Give me some perspective here. So for some reason, when we talk, no offense, when we talk about those southeastern states, I kind of go blank. Like Arkansas is directly south of Missouri.
Yes.
And then directly west of Missouri is Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
What's south of Kansas?
Well,
Oklahoma.
How far are you from Oklahoma?
Several hours.
Okay, yeah. I'm with you. So north of Arkansas.
It basically boils up in Arkansas or in Oklahoma, and last night was Arkansas, and then it just screams into Missouri.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Well, that's what it seems like. It, for whatever reason, historically in the brain, it's always been like, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska. It's like, oh, those are the guys that get slammed. And then now it's like Missouri, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama.
We get them in
Tennessee,
Illinois quite a bit too.
Illinois. Yeah, Southern Illinois got hammered. I don't know if they had any tornadoes come through, but they were in that same line that came through Missouri.
Even where we're at, West Central, it's like every time we go out there, half the trees are down.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Yeah. It's that whole area, and I guess you guys are set up for it is again today.
Yeah, again today, and then tomorrow there's 2.5 inches coming.
Jeez.
And then Sunday another 1/2 inch or something.
That's wild.
Crazy.
Are there like precautions for that? Do you guys buckle down at all, or you're just kind of like, we'll go in the basement if it gets screaming?
Yeah, we'll go in the basement if it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I'm in a rental, and so we'll go into the interior closet and pray for protection, and that's about all we can do.
Yeah.
Dude, it seems like when I was a kid, like we had that all the time. I remember doing like tornado drills in school, and like
we just went in the hallway and put a book over our head or whatever.
Exactly, yeah. Like put your head between your legs because you're asked goodbye.
Yeah, that was it. It was like everybody line up in the hallway, and you'd like just put your head down, and you're like, "Is this really what's gonna happen?" Yeah, but you never like. I mean, obviously, we're talking like Pennsylvania, like. Dude, I can't remember anything like in my childhood of a tornado, but here more recently, like even this morning, we had a tornado warning in Southwest Pennsylvania this morning at like 5 a.m.
Interesting.
Maybe same line of storms that came through, there.
Maybe we don't pay attention to them as much. Like I don't.
Well, it's been a while. I was at an NWTF convention, so it had to be February several years ago, and we had a tornado go through my property up here on the mountain. Mm-hmm. Emily called me, and she's like, I looked out, and like you could hear it coming, and it went right up like the road through our property. Came home, and like everything was mangled in the woods and stuff. House was fine, but it was like, damn.
Wow.
I don't know why, but the last year, I think we've worked between Matt and I and one of our other consultants, probably 6 or 7 properties where either a hurricane or a tornado has leveled it, or a portion of it.
Yep.
And it's like I never really dealt with that much, and then all of a sudden, 6 or 7 properties in 1 year.
Well, that's I mean, maybe we dive in right there. So my Kentucky property was hit really hard by Hurricane Helene when it came through like the Carolinas and had all the flooding and had the severe wind, and we have a lot of like ridges there. And so when I was there in February walking around for sheds and stuff, and I had the guy from Kentucky Fish and Wildlife out, like it in a way has created what will probably be a lot of just natural openings now from the amount of trees that came down. So it's an interesting like phenomenon of like, maybe I didn't intend to have bedding and browse start to pop up in these areas, but like it's going to be there.
Yeah. It's as I've told many of the landowners we worked with, it's probably, if we were to poll the deer, they would say, we love it. This is amazing. And as a landowner, we would probably 99% of landowners would never have a logger go in and cut that aggressive.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like, it's kind of that outside of having too many trees on the ground, so it creates a hindrance for the deer to navigate. It's one of those where it's like, well, we would have not done this if it was up to our choosing, but it's really awesome habitat.
It's funny how some of Mother Nature's like harsher prescriptions seem to be like the best thing for the wildlife, whether it's like fires, natural or prescribed, or the tornadoes like being another one. But we resist it because we're and rightfully so in a lot of cases because of timber value and obviously structures. You know, from a civilization standpoint, neither of those are great.
It always obviously like there's more concerning things from like a human life standpoint, but like when you see like I forget where the one was in Arkansas last night, Lake something, I can't remember right now, but basically, I mean, giant, like, and I watched it on like YouTube Live for, I don't know, half hour as the storm chasers were following it and stuff. And like, you see it like literally just consuming what are probably 10-acre type block timber in the big ag country. And you have to wonder, like, I mean, there's deer in there. Like, are they just dead? Like, I mean, that is a massive force of nature coming through there. Like, I don't know. I mean, you see what is left behind in some of these areas where, it's one thing if you're talking about like an F1 tornado or something, but when you're talking about these giant F3, F4 plus, like it's annihilating everything in its path. Like,
are you talking about tornadoes? Not,
yeah.
It's not flaunt fires.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about a tornado. Like, I assume it would just wipe out a deer herd that's locked down in a timber.
I wouldn't think so. A tornado? I would say a wildfire is more likely to. Adam, you probably can speak better than we can. I would think a wildfire for sure kills wildlife. I would think a tornado, they can hunker down pretty good, get in a ditch, or I'm sure some trees fall on them from time to time. But
I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's probably more mortality from tornadoes than fire, just because the fires they have time to run. But the tornado, from what I've seen, I've been fortunate to run trail cameras for a lot of years, especially cell cameras. And I can tell you one thing, when a tornado and severe storms are coming, ain't nothing moving.
No.
And it seems like they probably just all hunker down. So if they're taking a direct hit, I don't see how they'd walk out of that.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying is it's like, it's hard to watch because you're looking at these storms and you're like, that's big. But when you realize it's covering a quarter or a half mile wide on the ground, like, you're not getting out of the way of that. Like, I don't think that they're like running a half mile, parallel to it or perpendicular to it to get out of the way. Like they're going to get.
I don't even think that would be their intuition. I think they would just hunker down, trying to find the safest spot they can.
And of all the storm chasing videos I've ever watched, I've never seen one where they're driving, all of a sudden you see a herd of deer like running across the road.
Yeah, that's the same thing. And honestly, like in a weird way, I've never.
But you do from fire, right? Like especially out west, you see like herds of like
elk and antelope and stuff. But I've never heard anybody. Again, there's more concerning things when a massive tornado is coming through, but you also don't hear of anybody say like, I just found like 50 deer like just like dead in a field, like they got picked up and dropped.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe like they're like cats; they land on their feet. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But I just watched a documentary this week on the Joplin tornado, which is one of the
massive,
like, fourth most dangerous one ever. And that's only a little over an hour from me, and it was just like over 150 people died in that, and it's like, there are reports of what people were finding, but I never heard anything about finding animals or cows even dead.
Yeah, which is interesting. Yeah, I don't know how you put a finger on that, because the crazy part is where you hear these people that are like finding a receipt from somewhere like 200 miles away because it just stayed in the atmosphere and then eventually dropped down, and they pick up this receipt and it's from 200 miles away basically.
This is maybe
somewhat 10.
Yeah,
10 miles.
I find barn 10 all the time. It's like, what?
Where's that come from?
Well, they're like a couple miles away. Town got hit, and you're like, holy cow, could you imagine being walking through the woods and a piece of tin comes
like a sword?
Yeah, that'd be bad.
You see it wrapped in the tree, like you look up and you're like, where did that come from?
Dude, what about, I know it's not just me, and I'm pretty sure there's some kind of a theory about this, but do you guys find like balloons on your property a lot? Like the helium
balloons.
Mm-hmm. All the time.
Isn't there some kind of a theory about that? Like it's like the balloon theory. It's like there's something to do with the wind streams or.
I've heard that. I forget, it's another who, I don't remember the guy's name, but I've had several guys, just because the clients, they're not just watching or listening to me. They hear all kinds of stuff, and then we
Mm-hmm.
bounce ideas off. It's like, I don't know. I find those stinking balloons everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, where is this balloon?
I've seen
factory or
people be like, if they find a balloon, they're like, this is where I'm going to kill a big buck, or I'm going to find a shed or
superstition
whatever.
on it.
Yeah. Superstition around the balloon. Like, I see it on Facebook, like during the season, people will take a picture of balloon. They're like, I'm in the right spot. I'm like, are you?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Nature's calling to me.
Yeah.
It's one of those where somebody may have done it sometime where it's like, oh, look, I'm hunting and I've noticed that there's a lot of balloons. Or it just could be the fact that there's a lot of balloons.
Yes. I believe there's just a lot of balloons being
experience.
released into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my soapbox rants that I get on when it drives my wife crazy. When it's like, I see those balloon releases and I'm just like cringing. I'm like, why would you ever do that?
Why are you doing that? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, let's back it up here a little bit. If you don't mind, for our listeners, just give us tell us what you're doing with Land and Legacy, and if you want to comment on any of the other stuff we mentioned in the intro there about kind of how you guys got here and what you've been up to, that would be cool.
Yeah. So my business partner and brother-in-law, Matt Dye, we launched Land and Legacy in 2017. Since then, we've been assisting landowners in 32 states, and we're somewhere over 200,000 acres now that we've worked on. And we just work on managing for whitetail deer, wild turkeys, and bobwhite quail. So we're kind of a natural ecosystem management company where we really try to focus in on managing the native landscape first, and then adding the tweaks to improve hunting for success. So we've been doing that now for a while, and it's been a fun gig. It's kind of interesting how we got into it. I started out, people probably don't know this about me, or a lot of people, but I went to a small Christian college where the wildlife program was not great. So I actually majored in agriculture. And my plan all along was just get the degree, kind of have something to fall back onto, but you're going to work in the outdoor space and probably going to work with the management side, and the filming side is what I really was hoping to do. And I worked for the Department of Conservation briefly, and then I started working with Market Terry Drury kind of part-time for a little while. And then I worked full-time for them for a little while and got really homesick, and came back home, and then worked at Growing Deer for about 6 years, I think. And left there in 2016 and started Land and Legacy in 2017.
How did I not know that Matt was your brother-in-law?
Yeah. Just, I guess because they're so close, people think that we're just business partners.
Yeah.
But our wives are actually sisters.
Wow. So, that's crazy. I had no idea, honestly.
Were you guys connected?
So we are tied to the hip, whether we want to or not.
Were you guys connected before that, or?
Yeah, we met at Growing Deer. My first day as a full-time employee was his first day as an intern. So he was like 20, I was 25. And he did his internship, and then he came back to work at Growing Deer in like 2014 or 2015. And in the process of coming back, my wife, of course, has a younger sister, and she's like, we ought to set him up with Matt. I'm
Wives
like,
are good for that.
Emily. And I'm like, are you crazy? That's the worst idea possible.
You mean that, Matt?
Because yeah, we're talking about going into business together. We don't even know if we can work together. And now you're like forever in chaining us together if you do that. And so I outlawed it. And then he moved back, and about a month later, my wife said, we're going to Silver Dollar City, and Matt and Emily are joining us. So, that was kind of the old story. I said no, my wife said yes, and we compromised, and we said yes. So
that's
how that goes. Yeah.
Yep. And you live to tell the story today. That's how it goes.
Yeah. So the good news is Matt and I get along great, and I mean, we drive each other crazy at portions of the year like anybody, but at least during the holidays we get to talk business and habitat, and so it's fun.
Really cool.
It's a lot better than talking politics.
Yeah, no doubt.
For sure. Does Matt live in that area as well? Like, do you guys see each other like on a daily, weekly basis? Do you do a lot of these consults together, or?
No, we used to consult together when we were early on. Now we consult on our own, unless it's, it's a big property, and for whatever reason, something, I I think the last one we did together, we went back to the proving grounds. So the new buyer hired us. And so we were both like, oh, I got to go back and see the place.
Yeah.
So we
New
did that
buyer
one together,
of
but
I
I see him every week.
Grounds? Oh, I didn't know he sold it.
Half that one side.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I see Matt every week at church, and he lives in my hometown. So I'm in the process of building a house. He lives north of my hometown, 6 miles. I'm going to live south 6 miles. So we're going to be 10 minutes apart, 15
Very
minutes
cool,
apart.
man.
Right on. Right on.
So I guess, Adam, just, you said you went to a small Christian college, but you obviously, even though you went for agriculture, I mean, your mindset was like, I want to be in wildlife. I want to do habitat. That was the
absolutely.
focus.
And part of me was, they have a wildlife program, but like a lot of universities is like, it's not game management. It's not applied management.
Right.
It's, we're going to cover a whole lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
And I sat through a year of being a wildlife management degree, and the courses are like, this is, I have no idea how this ties to wildlife management.
It's a glorified biology sector.
What school was it?
So I got out of that. College of the Ozarks. It's in Branson. It's a little small. I mean, it's called Hard Work U, but that's where I went and, studied agriculture because they had actual places on the university or on the campus where you could actually go into a dairy barn and do ag stuff. So it was a pretty cool experience, but the wildlife side was just not for me. And so the whole time though, I was fortunate. We have a family farm my grandpa bought in the 50s. And so I was there with my brother, who actually was a wildlife management degree, going, okay, let's do TSI and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do burning and see what happens. Let's do food plots and see what happens.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, so out of school, you went to MDC?
Yeah. Yeah, I worked for the Department of Conservation and managing a several thousand acre tract. My boss was on his way out of getting ready to retire. So it was as close to handing the keys of a tractor and drill over to a 21-year-old and say, go have fun.
Yeah.
So I planted food plots and got to help with massive fires. And that was a lot of fun, but pay wasn't very good.
No. And that was on a conservation area?
Yeah. Right on the Arkansas line. Drury Mincy was the name of that place.
Very cool. Yeah. That's in theory, because that's what my mindset was when I was in school, was like, I don't know. I guess I was 20 years old and naive. I thought I was just going to get hired and like manage properties for deer. Like somebody was going to just pay me to do that. And they might, but not for a lot of money.
Well, not through the government either, right? Like there are, I don't know what you call them, farm managers. Yeah, essentially, that do that full time, correct?
Yeah. You mean on like bigger like plantations or like a Foxworthy Farms or something like that?
Yeah, my mind goes to Texas and some of the more southern
Texas
stuff.
was, honestly, that was probably the best chance to have one of those jobs. I just refused to move there.
Mm-hmm.
Just it wasn't my style.
Yeah. The weird thing is, with our job, we get to work with a lot of bigger landowners, and so we meet a lot of farm managers, and it's almost never this guy studied wildlife management, got out of school and found this landowner. Now he's working full time. It's always like, yeah, I knew him. We were buddies.
Yeah.
Or I was friends with his son and he needed help and I didn't have a job. So here I am. And 6 years later, I've been here the whole time.
100%.
Mine seemed to always be like,
he used to cut the grass. Now he mows, now he does the food plots.
Mine seemed to be like successful, like contractors or like builders and stuff. And then it was just guys that they had hired that were like, yeah, he's not real good at roofing, but he can run a tractor. from
a labor standpoint, it is a fairly decent crossover. It's like, hey, if you can run heavy equipment, like you probably put a food plot in,
Mm-hmm. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
You can dodge a ball.
That's how it goes.
Yeah. Or they got burned out on their day job and here they are. I see a lot of that where it's like a 50-year-old guy that's kind of, he was able to sell his business and he said, the heck with it. I'm going to go and work for this guy just to pay the bills.
It'd be a perfect retirement job, right? If you could get out through retirement and then just make, whatever cash on the table or decent pay and like just be running tractors and managing a farm, like that seems like a great place to be.
Yeah.
Even better if it's your own farm.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. It'd be on the other end of the stick. But.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Yeah. But
yeah, I laugh when people say, the phrase, the cobbler's kids don't have shoes.
yeah,
I think I dream of that day a lot because it's like I travel so much that I very rarely get to go and spend a whole week where it's like, oh, I'm going to
yeah,
work 4 days on the farm. It's like, I'm going to work one day and I'm going to drive around like a madman. And my wife's going to be calling me because something else is burning down at the house that I have to try
sure.
to get back for. And it's just, yeah, it's hard. So I dream of that day, retirement and work on my own farm.
Yeah. Well, man, I would assume, and I mean, I think I consulted for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. First of all, for anyone listening, it's not easy. One, because of, especially if you have a family to travel, I mean, you got to go type of thing.
Yeah.
I think the other thing on that side is it is pretty difficult to build a clientele list that actually is, I don't want to say worth it, but a clientele list that really cares about what you're coming in to consult with and discuss and hopefully implement. It's just there's not that many people out there willing to pay, to have that, and it is super valuable. And so, I would assume with you and Matt, it basically was, you guys really started to lean on the content heavy to get your names out there, which I think was probably, pretty early in the game of people that were doing consulting work actually doing visual content. Because for a lot of people, I think they thought it was like the secret sauce. They're like, well, if I make content and tell people in this content what to do, like, why would they have me out there?
Yeah, exactly. Coming from growing deer where we did a weekly video, there was always that like, why would they hire us if we're telling them exactly what to do?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it was when we launched our podcast, that was the thing that allowed us to get more exposure and get more consults. And so for us, it's been very beneficial, and I don't even think twice about it. But yeah, early on, you definitely question, why would we ever do that for free and give that content for free just because you can take it and run with it? But in reality, analysis paralysis is real.
Yeah.
And it's a pain, but it's good for business.
Yep.
Well, yeah, dude, that's a huge lesson, I think, because Jeremy and I, would say the same thing about just podcasting and talking about things. And maybe there are some I mean, I couldn't point to what they are, but it crosses the mind, right? You're like, there's things that I'm like, do I want to give the secret sauce to this or exactly how we did that? And maybe there's times where we've been like cautious of that, but generally I'd say, we're as open as we can be.
It still takes effort to do it. We could tell you, tell you what it is, but you got to actually like get off your butt and go out there.
Somebody can tell you word for word, like exactly what to do. And you're still going to be like, okay, so, but could you come out and like show me or like connect me with somebody that can actually do it? And so, yeah, it seems like
it's true with any trade. You can get on YouTube and figure out how to fix the leaky sink underneath your in your kitchen, but at the same time you might mess it up, and then you're going to end up calling the guy anyway. And that's kind of ultimately what happens for us. The guy attempts it, not sure if he did it right, goes ahead and hires us, and so we get to see some applied management, and then we get to tweak it. And
the HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
What can we say, man? Another year back with Hoyt. We're both shooting RX8s. I'm shooting 70 pounds in the bourbon, which I love bourbon.
It's great.
And you're shooting 80 pounds in the straight black.
Blacked out as always, man. I got so I'm shooting the 500 grain Easton Arrow this year. And at 80 pounds, I'm flinging that thing at like 300 feet per second. I mean, it's deadly. Put a water buffalo in front of me and he's done.
I mean, we shot it earlier. You literally put an arrow through a brand new target, like never been shot before.
I know. So one other thing that Hoyt is doing this year is they're making all their own strings in-house. And so the quality is top notch, and it just really is something that is setting them apart from their competitors.
Well, what we always try to do when we go to our bow shop, Ultimate Outdoors, is we try to shoot other bows just to make sure that we are really giving everybody a fair chance. Sure. The reality is it's a no-brainer. Hoyt stands above all of them every single time.
Definitely. And so right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, for 20% off any apparel on the Hoyt website. And as always,
get serious, get Hoyt.
Well, dude, what does a a standard property look like for you guys? Is there a certain type of, or, property you guys are looking for, or just ones that you generally get called on?
Average size is probably 100 to 200 acres, but I mean, we've worked all the way down to, I think Matt did a 16-acre piece on the East Coast, and then we've done several thousand-acre piece. And for the most part, though, it's a couple hundred acres. It's probably going to be a main focus on deer. It's probably going to have a lot more timber on it than it does crop or food plot or prairie. But then we get out west some. I mean, we worked a handful of years ago, we got to work the old Buckmasters Ranch out in eastern Montana on the Yellowstone River. And that was like,
Wow.
A lot less trees, a lot more just grass, just kind of an interesting piece of property, to say the least.
Yeah. I think that, definitely the type of property is a big piece of it, but I think it's the type of landowner, whoever's hiring you, right? There always seemed to be, there were guys who basically just wanted you to tell them how to do it. There were other groups that were basically in the standpoint of they think they know, but they just want somebody to kind of reassure that the activities that they have been doing or are planning on doing are actually right for that property. So you kind of have these multiple buckets along the way, and it's, sometimes you can debrief it on the phone, but really until you get there and actually have that interaction with that person. There were plenty of landowners that called me, booked it, and when I got out there, I never even met them. Like they just didn't. It was a farm manager or a relative or whatever. They just basically said, "Hey, tell them what to do, and they'll do it." Like, I don't need to know.
Yeah, I mean, my life is constantly shooting from the hip.
Mm-hmm.
They can describe to me what the property looks like. They can send over maps, but until we get on site, and talking, we don't really know what we're getting into, and that's why, like, even you get in there and you have to learn what their goals are. You have to learn their perspective. Then, most importantly, you have to learn their personality, because they may not be receptive to completely changing what they have been doing. It's I laugh when I tell the story, but almost every consult I'll tell the story where it's very hard for me to go into a property because it's over 50%, but you roll into a place and it's like, okay, what's your favorite area? What's your favorite stand? And I mean, so many times I almost get to where I don't ask the question anymore because I don't want to know, but what's your favorite stand? And they show you the one. They're like, this is my favorite stand. Okay. How do you get in here?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I come down that road. And I'm like, where did the deer come from? Well, that's the thing. That's why I like it.
That's the thing. That's why I got you here.
I'm like, oh, now I have to convince you that your favorite spot is the spot we don't hunt.
Yeah.
And that's the fun one. So most people are receptive and oh yeah, I understand you. And it's like, just the reminder, you hired me because you don't like the results. So let me help you change the results. But you're going to have to come along and think about this place totally differently than you have the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Is there a common goal that you see? I mean, imagine most people are like, I want to shoot more deer, bigger deer, but is there kind of a benchmark or?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same three on a large majority. I want to have more daylight activity for mature bucks so I can have more success. I want to improve the habitat for all the wildlife. And I want to just overall feel like I'm increasing the deer herd in a healthy way. And that's the three, because most of the time we're working with deer hunters, but then occasionally you'll say, I want to do some stuff for turkeys, or I have a slight love for quail, so let's do a few tweaks, but that's the majority.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess what do you see? We're talking just in generalities here. I know you said you're in 32 states here. I mean, what do you see in terms of like primary limiting factors or like biggest issues, like kind of across the board?
Yeah, no cover almost always. And I say that like pretty confidently that if there is cover, it's not spread out across the place. They may have one portion on the property where they've got decent cover, but it's not. It's like you've got that on one spot, and you all know that's where they bed, and you all hunt it too much, so it's not as good as it could be. Most guys, I mean, most people when they buy a farm and they're getting into the deer side, they're already doing food plots. That's like the first thing. That's the first hole in the bucket you start filling. I want to do food plots. Very rarely do I walk onto a farm and be like, wow, you have really good cover and it's in really good locations and you've got good access. Like cover, I would say 9 times out of 10 is the issue.
Yeah. And based on the types of properties you said you're on, primarily timber, I assume that's just spotty, like blowdowns and stuff, like little openings, and then everything else is just mature timber with nothing under it.
Yeah, yeah. And or it's a spot where they did some aggressive timber cutting. The logger got crazy and they haven't burned it for 10 years and it's just grown up high stem count saplings. That's when it's like, oh, okay. It's and I like to, for me, our business, I really try to say it's layman's term land management, where it's like, one of the biggest errors that I think people make in my experience is they overcomplicate it. And it's really not that hard when you look at cover. Like when we find it on the place, it's like, yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 4 or 5. It's better than the neighborhood, so the deer are using it, but it could still be a lot better.
Right.
And if you can just get somebody to convince that you don't necessarily have to make it a 10, just has to be better than the neighborhood. And so start small, start moving through the property, and you will make change.
Well, it's cool. I'll share you. We don't have to go all the way down this rabbit hole, but I'll tell you about Jeremy and I's primary. Like we use this as the benchmark from where he and I are coming from. Is Jeremy's got a farm in Southern Ohio and also Kentucky. That would you say they're fairly similar in terms of primarily timber, a lot of topography.
Yep, and not a lot of wildlife openings to create food.
Yep. So it sounds like pretty in line with a lot of what you're seeing there on client properties. And I'm coming from a bigger contiguous piece of family property that is, I would say, 60 to 70% old pasture mixed with ag. So in the past 4 or 5 years, we've transitioned maybe half to 2/3 of that into ag, and the remainder is it's decent. There's some decent white oak stands, and so we have some good mass crop.
10 acres here,
like
15 acres there type stuff.
Yep. So Jeremy's coming from a place in a lot of cases of like, hey, I have a lot of good timber of cover. I've done a lot of timber work, to bring open the sunlight up. He's working on some burns, as you heard on the intro there and stuff. And so his thing is, how do I get more food onto the place? Mine is like, man, I've got plenty of food between all of the the timber stuff we've done in the timber that we do have, and all of the food that I've added to the surrounding, open areas. It's like, it does not seem like a limiting factor. Mine for sure is what's left. How do I have all these old pastures, these fescue areas, things that are currently in ag? I'm severely lacking cover. And so we have a lot of conversations back and forth on like, is that switch? Is that, and every consultant obviously, has a different opinion on how to, whether it's a Craig Harper old field management, a switch with, diversity pockets or anything and everything in between. So we have kind of a lot of fun with the differencing opinions or perspectives on that.
Oh boy, you can make your head spin if you start going from one guy to the next and saying what's the magic sauce.
Yeah.
I love terrain and I love big timber. That's what I grew up in.
Same.
I forced to love it because I'm not moving out of it. So I just appreciate it for what it is. But it is, for me, I'm kind of a product of the outdoor industry. I'm 37. So I was born in 1987 and I grew up in the 90s with all the hunting shows on they were even doing hunting shows on ESPN. It was everywhere. And, I read a lot of magazines. And then I also went to the Bass Pro Fall Hunting Classic back when it used to be a big deal. And I would sit through seminars. And the big thing was just like, people had all this different stuff they would tell you to do. But ultimately, they were just saying, this is how you kill deer. And it took some years for me to realize, all the advice is about how to kill them, but nobody's really talking about how to grow them and how to hold them on a place. And I've challenged myself over the years to be like, okay, let's look at it not from a hunting lens, but really from a management side. What does a deer need, and how can I use that on my farm and diversify it? And that's where I've grown to appreciate timber, because I wholeheartedly believe that the quickest way to create bedding on a farm is through timber management.
Yeah,
and that's really had a drastic effect on my success. And I grew up where it was like, oh, we're going to plant brassicas this year. That's what everybody's talking about, brassicas. And I remember one year we had brassicas, and my dad sprayed Miracle Grow on it, and it was like the most amazing brassicas you ever saw. And the only deer I can remember coming in daylight was like a forked horn.
Yeah.
And we were running trail cameras, and it was like, well, it's amazing. Like, why did they not make it here? Like, why is everything after dark? And then I started reading the magazine articles where it's like, well, deer that are only on trail camera at night are nocturnal. And it's like, oh, I must have pressured this deer to make him nocturnal. And now I'm like, no, they just bedded 3 properties over in what is better cover. And so I have to put that a lot closer to my food plots or to my stand locations. And then I actually have a chance.
Yep. No, I think that's a huge piece. I mean, I can't remember, Adam, like the same thing. I mean, I'm a little older than you. I'm 41, but like, I don't, I read deer and deer hunting and stuff like that. And it was probably sometime around 2004 or 5 that I got involved with QDMA. And that's when management, like that side of it, like really started to resonate more with me. But because to your point before that, it was like tips on like how to kill the deer. Well, it never even rang across like a teenager's brain in my head that like the deer doesn't even exist to kill. Like it was great. Like maybe I was flawless. I guarantee I wasn't. But even if I was flawless, like there wasn't a deer to kill that was there.
It really was.
No doubt.
It really was. Like, would you say 10, 15 years ago? I'm trying to think of like, we're all generally in this same age category here, roughly. It was like, I remember Lee and Tiffany for sure. Like on a bigger scale, I can recall like seeing Lee like dedicating effort towards, and the Kiskies were doing it. I remember early,
probably later than that. It was like 2006 was like, I remember going. I think I went to my first QDMA convention in 06.
Okay.
And that was like my baptism into like deer management, because I was coming from Pennsylvania. I didn't have a family farm. The only reason I went is I worked with the Penn State deer pens. And so my team at Penn State for the research side, we all went to, I think it was in Virginia or something. We all went to the QDMA convention. That was like my first experience in that. But that was 06, so that was whatever.
06.
19 years ago.
I always lump like management advantages, always one that stood out to me too, that was like in that same, and they're still doing stuff, but but back then that was really, so I lumped them into that too.
Yeah, but that was probably
when would we have bought, because my dad bought a Furminator from Tom James's group, and he was with Management Advantage, and that was probably at least 10 years ago.
Yeah,
about that.
I met Tom 2011.
Yeah,
there you
with
go.
The Furminator.
Yeah,
and that was really kind of, it felt like, I don't know, maybe they wouldn't agree, but I felt like the heyday of that equipment.
Yeah,
well,
everybody was seeing it.
I would agree.
It was the one. I don't know what other equipment was being marketed towards food plots at that point, other than like maybe a Plot Master, like that was kind of coming in there. And I still have that Furminator. Frankly, it still works. We're not turning dirt as much as we used to.
That probably was the heyday of QDMA, like that 2010-11 timeframe. I know that they had big conventions in Louisville, Kentucky, and like that they had like Lee and Tiffany and those guys were involved with their Whitetail Properties was heavily involved with them at that point. Like that probably was the heyday of the QDMA movement from like a exposure standpoint.
It's funny how recent all of that like really is. I can even remember.
It's not that far ago.
I remember Winky talking about like the poor man plots and stuff, and like all of that. It's like within the past 10 years, we got to a point where everybody planting food plots at one time was like a real challenge. We're like, oh, maybe I could do that, or something. Now it's just like, all right, we got the food plot thing handled. We know how to do it.
Yeah, for us, on my farm back when I say we were doing the turnips, and then another one was buck forage oats. We had a 35 horse Massey. We still have it actually. 35 horse Massey Ferguson tractor, a 2-bottom plow, a disc, and a harrow.
Oh yeah.
And you go back on satellite images and you can see my farm. It's like we had so many little food plots, no herbicide sprayer. And so to get prepped, it took weeks. So it'd be like
just turning and
exposed
turning
dirt
and
for weeks on
turning
end in July and August. And it's
Yeah.
just like white patches on the satellite image. It's just baked soil. And I should call it dirt because it
That-
was not living. And you're like, it took forever.
Yeah.
Forever.
That is the
And
thing. I mean,
oh,
all of them, including, I mean, drills maybe more recently here, but sprayers for sure. Since you bring those up, I'm recalling like the first, it was a backpack sprayer first. You know, I mean, I went through 2 or 3 of those, and then I went to the 4-wheeler, like the little 25, 35 gallon you could fit on there, and then maybe eventually it evolved to, you know, I had the pull behind on the Ranger there, and then eventually I was like, okay, I need the real thing. So we have like a 3-point for the tractor, the 160 gallon.
Well, so much of that management. Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, like that, those southern states were always ahead of the game.
Yeah.
You know, they were doing food plots and TSI and burning and stuff. And I say that as compared to like the Midwestern states.
From a deer management standpoint.
Yeah. They were, you know, a lot of it was paper mill ground and stuff. So they were doing natural management practices on like the pine plantations and stuff like that. So they were implementing green fields and selective thinning and burning and all of those things. And so, you know, when you look at that, it really was, that's why I kind of said it's funny when you kind of hear somebody say something, you try to apply it to yourself. Is I remember a lot of that early information in that 2005-6 timeframe was like stuff from Mississippi that I'm like, how do I apply this in Pennsylvania? Like, didn't even make sense to me at the time. You know, coincidentally, I end up in Mississippi in 2007. But you know, at that time I'm listening to all these guys talking. It's the Craig Harpers, it's the Carl Millers of the world and stuff. And I'm like, in Strickland, and I'm like, I don't really know how to apply any of this. Like, you're talking about pine plantations and things like that. Like, I have Christmas trees. Like, you know, there is none of that stuff here.
Yeah. And that's for us, you know, in the consulting side, because we talk so much about fire because, you know, 2/3 of the country, we're going to recommend fire most likely, if legal. But then you've got guys that are in, you know, New York or even Pennsylvania, and they're like, how am I going to be able to burn this? And of course, in New York, you can't for a regulation standpoint. But like, well, you shouldn't be trying to burn a birch swamp or a beech birch forest. Like that's not a landscape that was shaped by fire and even is going to have a lot of fire on it. And it's like trying to get people to understand that just because I say it doesn't mean it applies to you and your property.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the even as far as timber, when it comes to some places where you're like, man, like I'm saying timber stand improvement, I'm going to backtrack a little bit because you said something in the TSI. It was already being applied down south. That's a great point, Jeremy, about pine plantations down south. Everybody, that was part of the culture. And now you start trying to bring that up in the Midwest and move north into the timber management side or the hardwoods. People are like, it took us forever to get people educated on TSI and even what it stood for. And then that's why I still use TSI, and I've been a little bit hesitant to adapt FSI, forest stand improvement, that Craig Harper's really pushed, because I'm like, we just now got guys understanding what TSI meant. Now we're throwing another term at them. It's like, no, I've always felt like there's a huge disconnect between applied management and the research in the world, where it's like, you've got all this great research, but how does a landowner read that and apply it to his farm? And that's really what Matt and I, early on our podcast, we did a lot, where here's research. Now, how does this apply?
Yep.
Because, you know, and having the knowledge to know that there's some research that does not apply to you. It doesn't apply to me. It's cool. Read it and move on.
Can you give like an example of that pertaining to TSI?
So like, well, not necessarily with TSI, because TSI, there's a lot of good research on, you know, like Craig Harper's thinning oaks. Well, people used to fertilize oaks thinking it would produce.
Yeah.
That was great research. That can very easily be applied, but it's just an emphasis on TSI. Then you go into the new research that they just came out with, a month ago, where they did the patch clear cuts, or the patch FSI, they said it. I mean, tremendous research for people to follow. We did a podcast where we talked about, it's not exactly like, because I saw a little bit where the C hinge cutting works. It's like, yeah, but they did a lot of other practices in those study sites. Like what we should all take away from that is do something.
Do something.
Just open the canopy a little bit and don't make a brush pile, and you'll have, chances are, I can feel pretty confidently saying, just doing something on your landscape, because almost everyone's doing nothing.
Yeah.
So if you just go out and cut some trees in a half-acre area, you're going to see deer come in there.
Yeah.
And one of the research, to kind of answer your question, Jared, it's a lot of the research indicates that most of the water that a whitetail deer gets is from the forage they eat. So it kind of is like, well, there's freestanding water, there's creeks, they're getting most of it from vegetation. There's no real need to go out and add a bunch of water on your farm, most landowners. And I lived that for a while because I felt like I was firmly rooted in research. But through hunting and observations, I'm like, no, actually, I'm going to fight back a little bit and say it's a pretty doggone good strategy to kill deer by using water holes appropriately placed on your farm.
Sure.
Yeah. And maybe not from like a survival or a habitat standpoint, I think is what you're saying. Like, they have the water. It's not that. It's if I can make it more convenient to them in a location where I can hunt them, then it's going to be a huge benefit.
And they may not have to go to the neighbor to get water now and get killed at 3.5. They can, I can hold them right here. And
dude, it's crazy.
I've always said it's
crazy.
an impulse. It's an impulse buy. Like, I went to the store to get milk bread and eggs before the snowstorm, and I walked out with milk bread, eggs, a Snickers, and a Coke. And it's just because it was at checkout. And it's like a deer walks in the food plot for the food, but there's a water hole right there. He's going to veer over and come get a drink.
Yeah.
And so everything I look at is through the lens of hunting success. What can I do to be more successful?
It's got to be as good, if not better, than a food plot from an attraction standpoint.
The water holes.
It's unbelievable the amount of daylight buck movement I've seen on water holes.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that much like a food plot. Like, in most cases, that those deer do not need food plots to survive. They're browsing. They're eating native forbs. They're eating mast. That food plot is just optimizing a hunting scenario. Like, sure, they're getting nutrition from it in some cases, depending on what you're planting, but like, it's not like it has to be there from a nutritional side or they're going to die. It's the same with the water holes. It's just, you're just optimizing a situation to bring them into your lap.
Yeah. Well, and the frequency in which they do it, as opposed to food, is, I think, what makes it maybe even a better tool. Like, if you can look at it and say, all right, here's a bedding location that I think he's coming from, and here's my access to a stand location or whatever. And if you can identify that, hey, there is no water between here and there, they're having to go down to the stream or go to some other location. If you can give that to them in front of it,
they'll take it.
They're gonna take it.
No doubt. And that's ultimately where I'm recommending where there's a water hole, and not only in the timber and really cool bottlenecks, but also in a lot of the food plots where it's like, if I can sneak in and never walk across the food plot and I have great access, I'm walking in behind let's say a switchgrass screen or a screen of edge feathering, and I can pop in and then have a water hole 30 yards away, and just, 150 yards to the left of that down in the woods is a bedding cut. And then I've got another one on this side. It's like, I'm just creating this perfect effect where, even though it's a 5-acre field, I have 2 of the main attractions, the other one being mock scrapes, on my end of the field. And I've cut down all the other limbs on the other side of the food plot. So ultimately, if they want to come to this field and communicate through scrape, they're coming on my end.
Dude, I can't even imagine what your mind must reel like looking at all of these properties. Like, I know how much trouble I have sleeping at night, just looking at 3 or 4 or 5 different properties, think about how I'm going to change things, how to lay them out and stuff, and you're looking at 200,000 acres, it's kind of unbelievable. Even from year to year, I'm like, I learned so much on each of these properties. I'm like, oh, I would change this, I would change that, or maybe I couldn't get a project done, or one builds on the next. It's just like, it really never ends. And it doesn't seem like there's a right or wrong way to do it either. It's like, as my style evolves, from a hunting standpoint or what I'm capable of from a land management standpoint, it's like, it's unending and it's awesome.
Yeah. And for me, it's, there's all kinds of other strategies that even other consultants use that have success. And so you can't ever take that away from them. But for me, like, I had a great question one time asking me about the 80-20 rule where he's like, I just want to know, he was a very successful business owner. He's like, we kind of have an 80-20 rule. And what is the 20% to get me 80% of the success? And for me, I was like, that's a very, ultimately people just want to know, how can I kill the biggest deer that's on my farm? Like, spare me the research and the details. Just tell me what to do. And so it's like, okay. And access being one of, I mean, I've seen so many good farms that are not good because the access is terrible. And so starting with access, bedding cuts or identifying quality bedding, adding bedding, improving the food source. So if you do have an a food plot, let's plant it at the appropriate time and use the correct seed variety, or we're not planting brassicas in April. And you laugh, but
it happens a lot. Oh
yeah. And then I say water holes and mock scrapes because they're just too easy not to do, and they're tremendous at attracting deer. So just those 5 things can really change. And it sounds simple, but the access is just the one that's like,
well, it's kind of because you're dealt the hand you have to a point. Like, yes, there are definitely people that are just disregarding access and doing whatever is the convenience thing. But for most properties, I mean, the number of properties we get that are, whether it's for sale or somebody says, hey, what do you think of this property? The first thing I look at, I'm like, you have 100 yards of south access, and like, that's it. Like, to access 200 acres. Like, it's just not conducive to access, and it's tough. Like, some of my properties were that way until the timber crews came in and created perimeter roads and stuff. It was like, I basically I had one that goes on this side and one right up through the middle. And like, if I didn't hunt the back of the property, if I did, I was just going to blow everything out on the way up in. Yeah. So that's a huge piece of it, I think.
Well, and you go to a landowner, you're like, Greg Glessinger is a great example where I have to bring up the awareness to a landowner when I work with them is like, listen, what you're doing is it's the easiest path. You're taking that ridge road, you're going right up to the food plot. It sounds easy, and it's, drive your e-bike or your 4-wheeler 100 yards short and you get out and you walk right up there. But that is actually not the way you should do it. We should completely change the way you're doing it, make a new road down on the boundary and sneak up the edge rather than going right through the gut of the property. And then then he says, well, I killed a big deer, the biggest deer ever killed on the farm. I did just that. And you're like, I can't argue with your success, but I'm telling you should have more success than what you're having with this approach. And so Greg was one of those guys. I worked with Greg in 2017, right out of the gate. So as soon as we launched, actually, I met Greg at Drury Outdoors in 2011, I guess, or 2010.
So he told us he used to film for him.
Yeah, I was his first ever cameraman.
That's cool.
And so met him, and it's like, the guy's killing some giants, but when you tell him, hey, I think we need to tweak it, it's like, well, I killed a 200-inch deer in those woods. Yeah, I know you did. This is Southern Iowa. I think you can kill bigger deer and have more of them if we stop doing that. He's like, yeah, great point. Okay. Yeah. And, Greg and I have had some, a couple years ago, we had a slight change in what we would converse with the contract crew. And, it was a fun time looking back. We were both like, it got a little, we both got a little warm trying to discuss what was going on. And now it's still one of the best food plots on the whole place. And he just tweaked the access because of things that had happened with the contract crew. But ultimately it's better. And to pull a guy off of killing giants one way to say we need to tweak it, that's not a very easy task. And we did it, and he's had tremendous success even afterwards. So,
well, dude, I've got a lot of people probably have examples of that, but literally there's a spot on our Illinois farm that we know is high risk because it's interior. It's one of those spots that's like, I don't know, do we go in there? And if we do, it's once or twice at the right time. And the first year we hunted it twice. I hunted it both times. The first time, just unsuccessful hunt. Didn't have a buck come through. Second one, I killed a 5-year-old buck out of it. It's just kind of a little hub in the center of this timber, and we have to walk up this creek to kind of get up in there. And so successful hunt. That was November 9th. I'm like, freaking A, dude, that plan played off where we just stay out and go in. And yes, what are the long-term effects of that, if any? I don't know. But then this past year, same thing. It was like I was waiting for the right time, and it was the first time I went in there. The one buck on the farm that I was hunting, it was like a big 5-year-old 11 point. Did the thing, got up, walked, followed this doe all the way through the farm, and was coming right up the gut. And sure enough, the only way that I have access into that farm is where they came from, and they got on my trail. She caught it, boogered up into the stuff, and he hung up, and then ended up turning around and walking away. Solely because of, not that I think the spot is unhuntable, but the only way that we have to access it is not the right way. We basically have to buy the neighbors and do what you said, basically cut a line down the edge here and creep down in there. And if that can happen someday, we may kill every deer off the farm out of there, but until then.
Yeah. My farm is a great example. My brother and I purchased the neighboring property of our family farm in 2021, and the previous landowner had paid to. I mean, he had a beautiful road. You could drive a truck, and in the Ozarks, it's mountainous, and so the fact that there's a road that you could drive a truck up was a blessing. And it kind of, you almost feel like a zombie because it's like you're naturally drawn just to walk that trail or drive that trail. In reality, I mean, it's the worst possible approach into the farm. And I see it so often where it's like a road, a nice road, you follow the ridge top because you didn't ever want to deal with mud. But in reality, when you have to go through food plot 1 and food plot 2 to hunt food plot 3 because it's your favorite, we've already messed up.
Yeah.
And so creating those boundary roads to start would be a tremendous, it's a tremendous goal for every landowner I work with. Or it's like, we have to find a way to work from the outside in.
Yeah.
And if we're going to bump deer, hopefully we bump them interior.
Yeah. Well, dude, that's where I think a consultant can be so valuable. It's like, I think Jeremy and I are pretty competent at looking at our own farms and even other people's farms and being like, here's how I would do it. And I'm sure, we have had some of our own success. We killed 3 bucks off that Illinois farm the first year we had it. But we run into things where I'm just like, boy, I don't know. One of the biggest ones, Adam, and Frank, and maybe you can weigh in on this, is, it's easy to, do, 2 + 2 = 4 in the sense that it's like, hey, all right, if I'm going to access from where they can't see or smell me, exterior of the property or whatever, and I'm going to hunt them this way with the wind in their favor, I understand how all these variables, coexist. Where the challenge is at is when you have like a larger farm, even, ours is, like 150, the odds of having multiple scenarios overlap, I think, gets higher. The more contiguous ground you have without roadways and stuff like that, or dead space. Yeah. And so we run into issues with like where to blow wind, where is the dead space. No. So it's like there's 2 situations that I can think of. The timber of finger, or the timber finger of woods I passed this year, probably 4-year-old 8 point this past year, walked right under my stand there, and the corn cove, and now 3 right behind the barn. I have 3 spots where I'm like, okay, access is solid, wind in their favor, it's all good. But where we're blowing our wind to is like essentially other setups, and so that you have these 2 scenarios, both of them are good, but it's like you almost can't win with the wind on both of them. So that's the struggle.
Yeah, I know. That's a struggle with a lot of properties where you're like, there are some stands where that's where you need to be, but what do I do about my wind? And that's where it's like, man, there's a spot on my farm where it's just, when you start listing out all the conditions that need to be to hunt that, you're like, I get to hunt this spot every 2 years, once every 3 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what? I hate that. if it's one of my favorite spots, you'd like to think that every year you get to hunt it, but and in this one in particular, you have to wait for the leaves to fall. It has to be a wind out of the southeast, and it needs to be ideally a day where thermals, and it's like a bluebird day where the scent's starting to rise in the mornings and suck out of there so it doesn't fall down on the landscape. And you're like, those conditions, it's like you have those stands, but you don't hunt them unless it's absolutely perfect.
Let me put it to you. Let me put it to you a different way, Adam. Maybe this will even explain it to you better. Imagine that you have, clean access from the east, right? So you have say a prevailing west wind, and just make it as black and white as possible. Let's say that eastern access is a road, and there's a field there. You walk across the field, and there's a tree line goes from north to south. That's how it connects the two timber blocks. And let's say rank it out of 10 in terms of like mature buck movement. Let's say it's like a 3 or a 4. We're like, they use it, and it'd be a good spot to hunt, and that's great. Okay, and then from there's another field, and if you cross it, there's another finger of timber that connects the two. Yeah. That one's like a 7 or 8. Okay, so you're like, all right, do I walk past the 3 or 4 to hunt the 7 or 8, knowing that anything at that 3 or 4 timber line is going to catch me? That's I think the question that I
think that's where it comes back to like time investment. Like we've talked to guys like Greg and Brackett and Drury's and all these guys who are hunting 95 days a year. Yeah, they probably could wait them out at the 3 or 4. Yeah. When I've got a week, I'm not waiting them out at the 3 or 4. I'm going after it. That's fair. And if I mess up, I mess up. But like I don't have enough time to wait them out.
Mm.
No, I'm right there with you. That's a whole nother conversation that I love to have, where it's like, what is the recipe for killing big deer? And, is it the right land, the right state,
time,
the right time? Time. I mean, for a guy that has 4 kids, 6 and under, time is not on my side.
No. Mm-mm.
And so, when you really start thinking about that, you got to think about the time. And so when you consider that, I would always say, well, Greg Glessinger is one that's really, really kind of helped me understand what a landowner is thinking as far as your return on your investment. Everything's a business in his world. So you're thinking, what's my ROI on that? If I do this, how quick is the return, or am I going to see it?
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to the hunting side, he's always like, play it by the numbers. When you have so many deer on a farm, deer will get downwind. Deer will be working behind you. So you do everything you can to get right into the bubble of killing the giant and not blowing the whole game. And so what we really worked on with his property, the way it's shaped, is getting just into the bubble and doing as much as we can just past that. So maybe it's a bedding cut, 100 yards out in front, or 2 of them, and you're just downwind to both of those. And so ultimately you're making as much attraction just at the tip of your nose.
Yes.
And kind of leaving everything back behind you to be more summer forage, let's say, or, if those fields are cut in October and there's no more standing grain in the next field, you don't cover crop it. So ultimately a little bit of spilled grain is the only thing they're using it, but everything bedding wise and mock scrapes, water holes is out in front of you. You just have to play it by the numbers. And that's what I do, Jared, is just try to improve whatever it is to improve up in front of you, whether it be with bedding or
that's a great answer. Scrape. I think in the way that I would internalize that is, and maybe what the prescription is if you use that analogy of the 2 timber lines there, if the first is 3 or 4, the next is 7 or 8, I think you do everything you can to improve the 3 or 4, to bring it up to or above the quality if that has the preferred access.
Mm-hmm.
Like the reason that challenge exists for us is that our farm is primarily western access, which we knew would be a disadvantage going in, but it has us trying to create situations like on the western third that we access from the west, and that's leaving things in the remaining 2/3 to the east that's challenging. And so
we did that on Greg's farm, just like that.
Yeah.
Where they had traditionally hunted, let's say 400 yards off the road. And it's like, there's, we're walking, when we're going in the mornings, we're bumping deer. It's like, we backtracked it another 200 yards.
Yeah.
And put put a better food plot and just brought bedding closer.
Yeah.
And, that's where they hunt now and have had success off of it. And it's just sometimes knowing when to pull the reins back.
Yep.
And because that goes with, you create a phenomenal spot. You're dealing with a guy who he's a client and it's like, he's a very successful, surgeon. So, and he's, didn't grow up hunting. So he doesn't have that woodsmanship dialed down and knowing when to not go in and when not to do it. And you get a tremendous spot created with the bedding cut and a wildlife opening, and there's a mock scrape in it, and they're daylighting like crazy. And it's like, dude, you can't get in there yet. The wind's bad, or they're right there at that line of they're coming through right at daylight. But you're gonna run into him when he's coming through. You're not gonna be in the stand. And having a guy learn that just because the habitat's great and the plan's great, knowing when to. You also have to hunt it correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's it. There's two very different schools of thought there. There is the thought of, I need to maximize this property's habitat and attraction to have the deer that I'm looking to kill. And then there's now that that's all there and he's there, now I got to figure out how to kill him.
No doubt.
And they do work together from a design standpoint. If you're creating pinch points or you're putting in food plots or water holes, we talk about big timber. To me, it's one of the big advantages I have in my timber properties is I typically have lower deer densities. So I can get away with some of these more aggressive stand sets because there aren't as many deer on the property that can get downwind from me. Mm-hmm. Sure,
Amen
some
to
will.
That. Amen to that.
Right?
That's how the Ozark Mountains are.
Yeah.
You don't have a ton of deer, so you can get away. And there are days you probably, like, if you're like me, you were like, boy, wouldn't it be cool to sit on this food plot and see 20 deer like everybody else?
Yeah.
But the mama doe with twins is what I have to deal with.
Yeah. And she's not downwind blowing at me right now, so I'm in a good spot.
But I think there's a great thing about that. It's like if we can get deer of age, it's a lot like a pond impoundment. It's a 4-acre lake. And, let's just say I draw this out on consulting. There's 3 lakes. One is high catch. You're going to catch 12-inch bass every cast. It's a lot of fun. But as we get a little older, we're like, I want to catch something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So we go to this other lake and we're catching a 6-pounder, but we really kind of have to work for it.
Yeah.
A lot of cast, we're not catching anything. Then you got this other lake and it's a 6-pounder every cast. Well, we all know that one doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And we work these properties where it's like, I got deer everywhere. And it's like, you can't have as many giants when you are just overwhelmed with deer.
Yeah.
And so you go into the timber side, like Jeremy, it sounds like your place similar in mine, where I don't have a lot of deer, but if I can get one of age and he's lived around here and he can get pretty big.
And he can be, and he's killable because of the situation that sets up. He doesn't have a ton of places to go for food from a food plot standpoint, right? It's limited in that. There aren't as many deer to blow me out in other places. I've got terrain, so my thermals are really aggressive, even either rising or pulling down in a lot of those cases. I mean, it makes them. It's crazy because I talk to people. Even we have discussion. I get away with a lot more on those properties because of the low deer densities. And to Adam's point, I mean, when I'm sitting there on one of the best looking, I'm sitting on green beans in Kentucky in the first weekend, and I got 5 does in front of me, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? It's just because there aren't a lot of deer there. Yes, I wish I had 10 bucks out there feeding in velvet, but that's it.
It's not the case.
It's not the case.
There's been a lot of stand locations my brother and I have hung thinking they're amazing. And then we sit there and we don't see deer, and you're like, is it that the spot sucks, or is it just because there's not that many deer?
There's not that many deer. Yeah. That's what it comes down to.
And I don't know about you, but for me, that's why you cringe whenever you're walking in the stand in the morning and you bump a deer and you hear,
and
man, you hear, it's like, that sounded like, and you're like, what's the point? That might have been the only 5 deer I'm going to see this morning.
Yeah. I think the worst, I was talking to somebody about this. I was at my kid's track meet yesterday, and we were sitting, and he heard us talking about the Kentucky farm, and he's like, man, he's like, yeah, that farm sounds like an amazing turkey hunting farm though. And I'm like, unfortunately it is. like it's like, we're good for turkey hunting for a couple days, but like I'm thinking deer, and it is like an amazing turkey hunting farm. And eventually, it's the bucket. Like, I don't know how long you said you and your brother bought that place in 21. I closed on this Maine, Kentucky farm in 22. And so a lot of those deer that I basically, when I bought that farm, are now recruiting into there'll be 4 next year. So I think I have 4-ish 4-year-olds, whereas when I bought that place, I don't know if there were any 4-year-olds on that property at all, so it's like, it takes 5 years to grow a 5-year-old buck, right? So as you're you're recruiting them from year to year, circle back to me next year. If even 2 of those make it to 5, like I'm going to have 2 slammers on that property that probably are very killable because of the way it sets up.
Yeah. And that's the unfortunate side though, because you go into those lower deer density areas and it almost seems like culturally everyone in the neighborhood's accepted big deer aren't here. So I might as well shoot what I can get.
That's exactly
And
it.
so, I mean, not this past fall, 2024, but 2023, I had never dealt with EHD on a scale that, Southern Iowa and parts of Ohio, where everybody else in the world, I swear, every couple of years they're dealing with it. I had never dealt with it. And we started seeing more deer in the neighborhood. I had neighbors that were like, man, there's a lot of deer anymore. And I'm just sitting there going, man, it seems like when I hear people talk about a lot of deer, EHD's gonna show its ugly head. And sure enough, in 2023, it did. And in that same fall, though, I had 9 3.5-year-old deer that I had on camera get killed by neighbors.
Oh my god!
So not only was there EHD, then I lost a whole batch of the next couple of years. And my brother and I have tried to decide that it's 5.5 or bust. I'll eat tags. I just want to see what deer can do in the Ozarks. And when you lose that many deer, and then that from EHD, and it's just like, boy, we're 3 years out.
It resets the whole system, man. That's what people, and that is the downfall of the low deer density areas. Like in these higher deer density areas that just persistently are higher, some of those deer will survive hunting season. Some of those deer will survive EHD. And so even if you lose a pile of 3-year-olds, there's still some 3-year-olds that'll make it to 4, and there'll still be maybe a couple 4s that make it to 5. In these low deer density areas, when you have something like that hit, I mean, it resets the clock back to 0.
It's also just the reality of like herd cycles. I mean, dude, a property's really everything's got to be going right and be finely tuned to be having like mature, what we're all looking for on properties every year. And there just aren't that many of them,
Yeah.
It's probably the thing I've learned the most since we launched Land of Legacy. I was consulting at Growing Deer, but a lot of the landowners were back in those days were more focused on just overall improving the habitat, want to do food plots. I didn't meet a lot of guys that were like, I want to kill, this is a deer property. I want to kill the biggest deer. I want to kill some giants. And I've got to work with those guys now. And I've got guys that have poured money into a property. Everything in their control is, dialed up, but the neighborhood. I've probably learned more. The thing that I've had to learn the hard way since we started was that the neighborhood impact is a lot greater than we probably care to ever admit.
Yeah.
And not only that, so you've got a neighborhood that wants to kill them young, which is okay, I guess, if, it's not necessarily what I'm into, but when that happens, that is so frustrating where you're like, I'm doing all of this and we're pouring into it and we can get there, but the neighborhood is just killing us. And for example, we have a client in Ohio where he's doing a lot of great work, more work than almost any client I've ever worked with, where he's done so much and then some. And if you look at his boundary, it's a 40, a 20, a 40, a 60, and they're all baiting.
Oh yeah.
And
trumps everything.
It's just like it trumps everything. There's another great point. That's the the product of baiting is like, yeah, food plots are great, bedding areas are great, and then a guy can throw out a bag of corn and it's
done.
Well,
odds are now evened.
I assume that's a big part of your strategy in bait states is like, hey, if you're going to pay me to consult on it, I'm going to tell you that we have to employ the most effective thing here, which is a feeding or baiting program to combat surrounding properties.
Yeah. In Kentucky, Ohio, places, and Oklahoma, where it's like, boy, the neighbor is really into, that's all they do is they bait. Well, how many, it's a property of the size where we can consider doe management and feel like we're actually making an impact. Okay, here's what I want you to do. Let's put some feeders out similar to what they're using. Let's say they're doing spin casters. Okay, we're doing spin casters too. We're going to do them closer to our boundaries, not on food plots, in little areas that you can get in and out of easy. And I want you to shoot every doe that's on your management plan off those feeders. And I want you to put the most pressure you possibly can on those feeders to where we're educating the deer to be like,
don't go to that.
The feeders are something you might want to wait till after dark to go to.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a strategic approach on it. Something that I haven't heard people do before, so that's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those where it's like, what else have we got? I mean, what else can we do? Not do feeders or feed and not hunt them? It's like, well, we got to kill deer anyway, so
well,
cut deer off.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Pure Wildlife Blends.
Yeah, buddy. We're doing a lot of food plots this year. It seems like the planning, the preparation, like the coordinating for getting everything, in the ground, it's like it just never ends.
Yeah, and I just got off an 18-hour bender where I'm on multiple farms getting everything ready. But this year, fortunately, we've got Pure Wildlife Blends, which is Jeff Sturgis. Who better to partner with for our food plot program than a guy who's got 30 years of experience, been on thousands of farms. I mean, the guy lives and breathes food plots.
Yeah, and so the blends themselves are all handpicked by Jeff, and it's like, man, we've had a lot of conversations with him over the years, and he's been pretty influential in how we set up farms and stuff. And frankly, the product, it's in a name. It's Pure Wildlife Blend. So a lot of these other seeds that you see that are blue and orange and all these things, it's because they're coated with lime and they're dyed, and it's marketing at the end of the day. So we have a lot of confidence in the seeds that Jeff has chose, and that's what we're going to be planting this year. And so right now, you can use code HUNTR10 for 10% off anything on the website.
So if you're looking for switch, clover, brassica, or Jeff's favorite, layer in the rye.
Layer in the rye.
Yep. Check out purewildlifeblends.com. The hardest part about, and I don't know about Oklahoma, but like I'll stay in Ohio and Kentucky just because that's where I'm spending a lot of my time. The hardest part about managing those deer herds is that starting from now until probably August, early August, those deer are living on the better quality habitat properties. They're moving into them now as green-up's happening, as crops start to happen, as food plots start to green up. They're
summer habitat, but habitat.
Yeah. I mean,
not influenced by baiting.
Exactly, not influenced by baiting, to the point where like I'll have. I mean, if you take a screenshot of like the deer I have on camera in late July on either of the properties, Southern Ohio or Kentucky, you'd be like, wow, dude, like these are amazing properties. And they are. And it's a lot of the habitat work and food plot work and everything that's going with it. The moment August and September comes and people start to bait, to draw in, to start prepping their hunt, right? It's immediately like gone. Like they just go.
Hard to know, because even out without bait, I mean, there's some sort of a shift, right?
Sure.
I struggle with that.
But not to that level of like, you go from having 15 bucks of 3.5 years or older before mast really starts to fall in October, and they're gone.
Well, I'm with you.
Then they return when all these seasons stop, or at least the main gun seasons are done, and people stop baiting. All of a sudden, you're like, there he is again.
Interesting.
Yeah. I've seen it. And, Missouri's not even a bait state.
Well,
but people
legally.
still do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, legally.
Yeah,
the only people that aren't doing it are me and a couple of my friends. But, it's scary. And I'll share a story with you that 2 years ago, I shot a buck first night out. 6.5-year-old that we had he had made us mad the year before as kind of a bully. So we're like, you're done. And as soon as we can kill you, we're going to kill you. And I killed him the first night out for me, September 17th. And then my brother, a week and a half later, killed a buck on another farm. So, and we kind of always said, on the family farm, on our farm, it's one buck. Even though we get two, it's just one. And we're like, you know what? it's legal in Missouri at that point. We're in our CWD zone now, but we could bait but not hunt it. So we're like, let's just see what happens.
100%.
What I learned through that fall of baiting and watching trail cameras was like, this might be the easiest thing in the world to kill a, we had a deer that was 4.5, probably low 50s, that we're like, oh, he's going to be a giant. And that deer was almost like a crack addict, where we put out feed, and within 2 hours on a couple bait stations, he was there.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if we just midday went in and dumped this out, climbed in the stand, it's over.
Yeah.
Like, this deer is done.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was bedded down next to the bait stations. He was just there in the middle of the day, and just like,
and no pressure on him either.
Well, dude, and in those states, like in Iowa, maybe there's some others, but like they have such an advantage to, if they're not hunting that property, think about guys that own multiple properties. It's like they may hunt 1 or 2 properties and just feed the crap out of the rest. And keep the deer there, and then when it's the year to hunt that or time to hunt it, they just have to be within the time frame of getting it off there, and that's a very effective strategy.
No doubt, no doubt, and it's kind of a kick in the gut for me, because you get hired to improve habitat, and then the neighbor goes out and dumps feed and kills the big one. You're like,
oh, dude. Well, what's the definition, Adam, of is it a moron or an idiot?
Stupidity.
It's me, because it's like you're just doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Is like, our family farm is in Ohio, as I mentioned, and we bait defensively. Like we don't have feeders, but we buy, I forget what I bought, 10, 20,000 pounds of corn last year, a crap ton of it, a couple $1,000s worth, and we generally don't dump it until
November.
A week or 2 leading up to like youth gun season. We're trying to just and honestly, that much corn, it goes really quickly when you dump 10 piles and you're trying to be conservative with it. But in the meantime, like, all of my effort and the majority of our money that we put in the property goes into habitat improvement. So I'm planting, 10, 15 acres of grain, 5, 10 acres of brassicas, we're doing all the switch, water holes, clover. I mean, anything and everything we can do to improve it because I love doing that stuff. And but in the back of my mind, I'm like, I know it's not the most effective thing for holding the deer on the property. I'm like, am I just an idiot, or am I okay just continuing to do what I enjoy doing? And if it doesn't give me the exact result, then, so be it. A lot of us, I think, in Ohio find ourselves caught in that kind of conundrum, because you're like,
it's I have this conversation a lot, especially with another consultant that we have that's down in Alabama, where it's like, do we just wish they would legalize baiting across the board, every state? Or do we wish they would outlaw it across the board? And you're like, well, if they outlaw it across the board, then it's the only guys that are really going to get negatively impacted are the guys abiding the law, because so many other people are going to do it regardless. And that's where, like you asked earlier, and every state that I work that has allows baiting, we're talking about a baiting strategy.
What do you think about this, Adam? I thought of this recently, just out of our own. Like, man, here's how I would control neighbors doing it, is these freaking thermal drones at night. Like, how easy would it be for the DNR to throw that up and just fly over an area, and they're going to be there. There's going to be a very tight congregation of deer over in an area. Just issue them a ticket, say, hey, the landowner's responsible for their property, or assign it however you want. But there you go. Nighttime, throw a thermal drone up and you'll find them pretty dang easy.
You would. And that's where I would, I've laughed about buying one and donated it, just because I'm like, go get them, go find all the people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, with the laws, I think it was in Kentucky or Tennessee, wasn't it, where they had that, basically found it unconstitutional for, unless they had a written warrant, they could not go on the property.
Yeah, I think that's in Tennessee.
And so then you go into what is the legality of flying
it's
drones
airspace. It's open airspace. Yeah, you can fly wherever you want.
And so it's like, oh, man.
But then what do you do? Do you get a warrant to have to go onto that property?
Yeah.
I would just issue them a ticket. I just mail it to them. Just like I get speeding tickets in the mail.
I don't know. I'm saying these letters twice on a podcast, and I've really tried to avoid it. But most states that are doing CWD targeted culling, what are those state agencies doing?
They're baiting
to cull deer.
Yeah, they're baiting.
They're baiting,
right?
And they're using thermals. And
Yeah.
you're like, how is that going to hold? How would that hold up in court if
Yeah.
a guy who's doing exactly what the state agency's doing?
Well, we kind of talked about this the other day, right? There is a difference. I mean, the government should be able to use more effective resources than the general public.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a different thing that's happening, I believe. I'm not saying I'm for the calling efforts that's happening that way. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
But I understand if things need to be done a certain way, then So
well, I mean, let's flip the script and play fun for a while. Like, what does deer hunting and management look like if baiting becomes legal in every state? Like, if they're just like, boy, the amount of resources that we're spending trying to suppress this, clearly in a state like Pennsylvania, that baiting's never been legal, people still do it. Like, they sell pallets of deer corn every year at Rural King or Tractor Supply or whatever, and guys are buying it and they're putting it out. Like, at some point, what if they're just like, go for it? I mean, the public land side one is the hardest. Like, that would get you start baiting on public land legally, and you're creating somebody's gonna get killed is what's gonna happen, because it's gonna be I had my bait pal here, you had your bait pal here, interactions not good.
It's not public. Yeah. It's not. Let's just stick with private land, because I don't think it's legal on public.
So
you
say I don't think it is either. Private land, anywhere you have private land, you own the land, or you lease it, whatever, you can put. You can bait.
So, because right now it's Ohio, Kentucky, and Kansas, and Oklahoma
for baiting,
and maybe some northeastern
Georgia,
Maryland.
Yep.
Maryland.
Yep. Yeah. So there's quite a few of them.
Yep. Some of the Carolinas, I think, too.
Alabama.
Okay. Mississippi too. They've got some sort of small regulation, like 100 yards or out of sight. I don't know exactly what it is.
Okay.
But
I don't think it's legal in Texas, though, right?
Yeah, probably not. No, only marshmallows.
Well, since we're throwing them out there, that's quite a few that it's legal in.
Yeah.
The ones that it's illegal in, just in the Midwest, would be starting with, I guess, Pennsylvania, New York, it's illegal as well.
Mm-hmm.
West Virginia.
No, in West Virginia you can bait. In some places, I don't know if it's everywhere.
Virginia, illegal for
sure. Yeah, because they banned urine.
They got a whole other issue with
CWD.
They got a whole other regulation deal.
Yeah, they're in a deep one there.
Indiana illegal, Illinois illegal, Missouri illegal, Iowa illegal. You can feed, but illegal to bait.
Yeah, which I despise that fine line of feeding but not baiting.
That's the gray area. Well, it says that it has to be, I can't bait and be hunting deer if it's causing, like if I'm hunting them.
Yeah.
I forget the verbiage they use.
Super gray.
Like, it could be a mile or it could be 100 yards, and it's up to the game warden's opinion.
Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, all illegal, right?
Illegal. At one time, Michigan was legal for baiting, but not now.
All right, so
some of it, maybe the UP of Michigan,
maybe 2-1 illegal to legal.
I'd say so.
Like.
Right. Yeah.
So what do we think would happen if that's what we're talking about, playing it out? If they just said, "Hey, go for it, everybody, it's fine, bait whenever you want."
Yeah, I think it would have catastrophic. It would be catastrophic for somebody like me, where it's like the age structure would get hammered because 3.5-year-olds are like the dumbest buck in the world to go to a bait station.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so that would be a major impact. And but the amount of money that would go into, let's just say, the economy, in short, because everybody's buying feeders and bait, it'd just be like, that's why you would be afraid that I would be afraid that the government representatives would be like, oh, we see way more positive in the amount of money going into the economy than we do with the negative.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a big thing. I don't think we would kill more deer. I think people would be more selective because of the observability increase that would happen. Like, to Adam's point about killing 3.5-year-olds, people sit there with a cell camera on it, and they're like, I'm not going to kill a doe today because that 3.5-year-old's been coming every day or whatever. I think you'd be significantly more selective. I mean, here's a great case in point. They finally released the stats. I thought this was really good. Like, we've talked about Ohio, where we're killing more bucks than does, basically, in a lot of states we are. Pennsylvania killed 2 does to every buck this past year.
No kidding.
Yep, 300,000 antlerless deer, 150,000 antlered deer. I think a lot of that is the ability to not be as selective because of observation. It's hard to observe deer without bait and stuff like that. And so I think it's more opportunistic hunting. Some of the landscape sets up for that. Obviously, we have large public land where, you know, opportunistic is going to be a big favor in that point anyways. But I don't think you kill more deer, which in many cases is what I think a lot of states are justifying of why they have baiting, is that they're like, oh, well, if we took baiting away, we'll kill less deer. Maybe like for a year or two, but I think long-term you kill more deer without baiting.
Here, this would be my full diagnosis. You help me keep this straight, because I'll get it crossed up here. I think initially, like everything you guys said is true so far. I think you're going to see a decline in age class pretty quickly, like over the first couple of years. I don't think that we'll kill any more deer. I think it'll be like relatively the same. I think that you will see an influx of, like you said, money into those efforts. You know what I mean? A lot of that is going to happen in, you know, small properties and this kind of stuff for a short period of time, maybe for a handful of years. I think at the same time, you're going to see a scramble it's going to create a further division between a rich and poor class of hunting. Guys who are wanting to guarantee their future, you know, to have space to try to grow mature deer, are going to buy as much ground as they can. You know, that's what's happening now. That's what states don't understand about the implications of technologies and baiting and stuff like that.
They're going to build fences too.
And fences will be a major one. And then I do think probably 3 to 5 years down the road, you start to see a very steep decline in hunter numbers.
I was going to ask, where do you think hunter numbers would go?
Yeah, because...
Yeah, I think they would decline. You know, a kid who's growing up sitting on a bait pile, at some point I don't know about you guys, but for me, growing up in Missouri where it was illegal and then going to states where it was legal, I just felt like
feels like cheating.
I felt dirty. Like
I felt dirty.
Like I'm just setting my sin here.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sitting on it and there's a feeder and there's deer at it. And it was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Well,
and as long as you're seeing if you're seeing big deer on that, then okay, maybe it's not the way I want to do it, but man, there's still some great deer here. In this situation where we're talking about, and this is like what Ohio's become, is like those don't exist. You know?
The
experience just sucks in two ways. There aren't big deer, and you're having to do it over a corn pile.
I just think it continues to disengage us away from woodsmanship, which was like the addicting factor, right? Just being in the woods and building the momentum to it, whether you were working on the farm or back in when I was growing up, like we didn't work on anything, but I was in the woods, I was scouting, I was looking for deer sign, right? The more that you can literally sit on the couch with a cell cam on a corn pile and just that disengage eventually you have razor thin attachment to hunting as an individual. It's
bragging rights used to come from, I tracked, like if you're thinking about kind of deep woods, I tracked this deer X amount of miles and I killed him, or I found this deer and I found this bed and I came back and killed him a couple days later. And it feels like we're kind of like, check out the big deer I killed.
Yeah,
don't ask me how I killed him, but check out the big deer I killed.
It's like a don't ask, don't tell. It's like, I know how you killed him.
Well, there's one in Wisconsin right now. Have you guys seen this non-typical in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
So it just came out coincidentally on April Fool's, but apparently not an April Fool's. It's 50 inches bigger than the non-typical record in Wisconsin. And they scored it at the Wisconsin Dells Classic. So it's official scored. It's after the drying period, but it hasn't been put in the books, mainly because nobody knew about the deer. It looks like a high fence deer, whether escapee and or trying to pull one over of like, I killed it in a high fence and I said I shot it here. I don't know.
Escapees are valid, right?
No,
they're
not valid. No.
Oh.
No. I mean, they killed a 330 incher in Kansas a couple years ago. Like not valid.
Legal, but not valid.
Yeah, I mean,
you can shoot them.
Yeah, you can shoot them, but just not valid for the book side of things. But So a lot of questions being asked of like, okay, drying period's over. We officially scored it 50 inches bigger. Why is it not in the book?
Certainty.
Assume that there's some investigations behind it. Because again, we're in that, per what we all just talked, we're in that era, especially in a state like Wisconsin with whatever 500,000 deer hunters. Nobody knew about this deer.
Yeah, weird.
Nobody's seen it. No trail camera pictures have turned up. Like, doesn't exist. Actually, one turned up, but it was a bad Photoshop. So like, how is that possible that deer nobody knows about gets killed? Probably because it's not legitimate. If it is too good to be true,
sure,
probably is too
interesting.
Good to be true.
Yeah. It's definitely something. The whole baiting thing is. Where have we gotten at this point where you think like it's 2025 and this is what we're dealing with, and it makes you really miss the lever gun 30-30, no idea what's on the farm, walking around, doing some deer pushes, just wondering what kind of buck's going to run out of that patch of brush.
Yeah. Well, it's hard, man, because I think that we talked about this a couple weeks ago about can we put the cat back in the bag type of thing. And, you know, I think the states can. Individually, sure, you can make a choice to do it. I think the states can, and I think some will, you know, whether, Kentucky right now for 6 months out of the year, starting March 1st through July 31st, you cannot bait. I think that is that's a tee up towards it going away completely here, whether it's 2 years from now or 5 years from now. I don't know.
Did you see Washington State recently? And I didn't know this. They're on the other side of the country. Apparently, you could bait for.
I had no idea.
For elk.
Yeah.
And shoot deer, elk off corn piles.
Yeah. And now you can't.
And recently, they for CWD is what they claim.
I don't see it going. I mean, we just obviously talked about it. I don't see it going the other way. I see it coming back to where baiting is being redacted more and more from states, whether they're going to use the CWD crutch or not. I don't know.
Somebody sent us something the other day.
Tennessee?
Is it Tennessee?
Yeah, they're saying that they're going to follow Alabama's kind of plan, and they're like, Tennessee's going to legalize baiting.
Interesting.
Maybe. But also Tennessee's got some of the deepest CWD pockets.
The only argument for that, in my opinion, would be a misguided belief that that's going to encourage deer harvest or keep people interested in the sport.
Which again,
which I think is, like I said, misguided.
When we talk about opportunity doesn't yield opportunity. Right. Like that mindset has been embedded in many of the like DNR agency legislature timeframes. That's like, hey, if we create more opportunity, like that will bring more people to do it and we'll make more money. Not the case.
There's no other way to advocate for it. Like, what good does it do?
Don't know. We won't kill more deer. I think that is probably a misguided one. Is somebody is saying, hey, if we do this, we'll kill more deer, and that'll help the overpopulation.
Either that, or like in Ohio, the folks from Ohio told us themselves they're just afraid to get rid of it because it's so ingrained in our culture here that they're afraid of a big loss of hunter numbers. But there is no answer at the same time for, well, hey, you're losing hunters in the meantime anyways. So,
or is there somebody on that game board that has a self?
There is
towards it.
Yes.
For sure. There is.
It's like Missouri opened up all day turkey hunting a year ago, 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. And it was kind of like we're in one of the biggest downward slides of turkey population. Everybody's upset about what's happening, and they gave us more opportunity.
Yeah, why?
And I mean, there was a huge and rumors are there was people higher up that wanted all day hunting. And, who knows if that's true, but you're like, why would we do that?
Had nothing to do with the resources is what it comes down to.
Yeah. Yeah. They said we were losing the younger generation because they couldn't get out and hunt with school and extracurriculars. And it's like, well, I got bad news. It's not just turkeys that they're not chasing.
Yeah.
It's pretty well anything outdoors.
Anything. It's such a hard discussion to have. And again, you're never going to people please everyone, but the thought process has been proven over and over again that opportunity does not necessarily yield opportunity. And so, somebody, and we've said this numerous times, somebody's going to have to, whether it's a sacrificial lamb or have enough power to juice the system and make a decision that frankly is going to be like, whoa, can you believe they just did that? Like, I know it was, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, but when Kansas basically out of the blue was like, hey, we're going to ban baiting. And there was like, it seemed like it came out of nowhere. And then quickly lobbyists and industry struck it down. Had they done that, it would have changed the entire course of Kansas deer hunting. I mean, it would have
could still happen too. I mean, but like kind of what we're saying here, Adam, is like you can look at it pretty black and white. Like on a scale, we see like opportunity on one side, which is anything and everything from liberalization of season dates and bag limits, the weapons you can use, the technologies or baiting that you can use there, and the experience being on the other side of it. And it's kind of like a tipping scale here. The more of this that we have,
the experience goes down.
Yeah, that's it.
Thermal drones, the experience goes down.
That's it.
Like,
and not inherently. Like we're not saying, hey, all of these things are bad. Like they're all cool, and some of them are great management tools. But
together,
the understanding of how these get applied to a season and knowing that people will take them to the extreme, ultimately, most of them have a net, negative decline on the experience for the general.
There's a good chance that if they remove baiting from some of the culturally rich states that baiting has just always been a part of, that for a 2 to 3 year period, they will have a steeper net loss of hunters than the trajectory that they're on. However, I think that curve slowly comes back up because of the strengthening of the engagement between the individual and hunting. It will be, I can't just sit there on my phone and be like, yep, every day he's been there, I'm going to go kill him. You're going to have to be out in the woods. You're going to have to be present out there, whether that means scouting or you may just have to sit for more days in the woods than you did over a pile of corn. Regardless, you're going to have to be more engaged. And will some people say, I don't have time for that? Sure. And if you don't want to make time for that, then, hey, I get it. Like it sucks, but it's your call. At the end of it, though, I think the younger generation who has been glued to these things is going to be more engaged with the outdoors. I mean, dude, when we didn't have these fences, like I lived in a creek catching crayfish and salamanders. Like that's all I did as a kid. Like, that was my thing outside.
Think about it as a kid right now, dude. The barrier to entry to a good deer property is so high.
Like astronomically.
You and I, as guys like in our 30s and 40s who have like for the past 15 years been building and basing like our careers around trying to generate opportunities to do it. We of all people should have access, have opportunity, and we do, and we're doing the best we can, but it's really challenging. Put yourselves in the shoes of like a 12, 13, 15-year-old kid who just now today is like, I'm trying to find a good place to deer hunt.
Damn near impossible.
All right. Yeah, you got money for a lease. Can you afford a mortgage on a property? Like, do you have all these?
And it takes one bad incident on public land to deter them greatly. To be like, that's not
which
worth
takes
it.
No time at all. I mean,
takes no time.
That out pretty
quick. One interaction.
I don't know about you guys, but I used to hunt a lot of public ground before
so did we.
Brother and I bought that deer behind me. That's a public ground deer, and I've gone back. I used to hunt them a lot in high school and then early in college, and then post-college gone back, and it's like, what happened?
Yeah.
Like there are people everywhere. Like this doesn't, I can't imagine that being my only opportunity to hunt, and how discouraged and possibly taking up fishing I would be doing.
Well, and that's a direct result of the insulation that we're seeing because of the liberalization of opportunities. So as those opportunities exist, people are like, I need to insulate. So they either buy more land or they lease more land. And in a lot of cases, we talk about it, they don't even hunt it. They just secure it and lock it down. And that's displacing people further and further onto what's left, which is public. So that's the perceived impact. Like, I really don't think we have more hunters today than we had 20 years ago. But the perceived...
I think we have less, legitimately.
Yeah, but I think the perceived impact of there's hunters everywhere is because of how land has been locked down privately, and that has forced people onto public. So when you go to Southern Illinois and you're like, dude, there's not a parking spot here. 20 years ago, there were more hunters and there were still parking spots. Yeah. It's just everybody's been jammed into smaller areas.
Well, dude, in those known deer areas too, like especially in those areas, because it's a destination for whitetails. A lot of that is displacement of residents, so it's non-residents buying or leasing larger tracts.
Kansas was a big one of that.
Yeah, dude, we used to hunt a lot of Kansas public, and we saw the same thing you did. Over the years, there just was people everywhere, and overwhelmingly, at least 50% of them had been displaced residents who, lost places to hunt and
to leases or somebody bought.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I see a lot, where people had permission.
Yep.
I'm in my hometown. I'm going to live in my hometown. It's like a lot of the places that you could go, big tracks where the guy would let anybody hunt if you had and give anybody permission, and then all of a sudden somebody rolls in and leases it up.
Yep.
It's like now you got 5 guys who used to hunt that place all displaced and trying to find new areas. And and I'm not on either side of the fence. That's what I see.
It's just the economics of
it. I understand the other person's perspective. Is like, hey, I'm trying to do something special here.
Yep.
And I want to grow big deer, and those guys are all not really. Some of them weren't even playing it legally, didn't have tags, and then the other side is, boy, for hunting culture, what is best?
Yeah.
Do we dial it back and say, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I hope not, because the other one's really good for my business.
Yeah, well, I think that there's, in the perfect world, right, we all can just self-regulate. And it's like we know what's best for the resource and for the experience, and we just self-regulate. Like I pulled back a lot on my cellular camera use last year, and I was better off for it. I probably killed a deer in Ohio that I wouldn't even have hunted, I'm sure, if I was just basing on cell cameras. I had SD cameras that I hadn't even checked yet. But, and you can't blame them, but whatever's legal, most guys are going to push to the boundaries of. So, it is up to the states to figure out where that fine balance is. And the states have two things that they have to worry about. They have to control the deer numbers. We're talking specifically deer here. They have to control the deer numbers. That's a major requirement of their duty of why they're there. And they have to ensure that the dollars coming in from hunting license sales are able to maintain that agency. Some agencies like MDC are different if they've got tax and stuff like that, or Pennsylvania's got oil and gas, but still license sales, meaning you can't lose a pile of hunters. And that also will affect your management aspect unless the people left behind can kill the same number of deer. So they've got those two things to worry about. They have to be looking at a trend here and saying, every state is they're saying, are we killing the same, less, or more deer? It's the first question you ask, right? And if you're killing less deer, you have to ask why. Is it because there's less hunters?
Is it because there's less deer?
Is it because there's less deer? Like all of those questions, each agency has to be asking himself. We ask ourselves as a landowner, right? It's like, I don't know, like I killed less deer last year. Is it because there were less deer? Is it because I hunted less? Because it was the conditions? But I think if you look at it from the state level, when they get an answer that they don't want, we killed less deer. How do we increase opportunity? It's the first thing that they say. How do we increase opportunity to kill more deer? The answer may lie in something that they gave as an opportunity in the past. Baiting, crossbows, whatever it is. I'm not going to pick on any of those individually, but one of those things could be the key to creating a better hunting harvest situation. And instead of looking backwards, they consistently are looking forward. Make gun seasons longer, add straight wall cartridges in states that they weren't, whatever it is. And it's like, why are we not looking, like any science project should be like, let's look back and say, what did we include and what were the results of that? Instead, the past is the past. And we're like, well, what can we add that's going to make this achieve our goal? I think it very well lies in what they've probably legalized in the past that has affected it. Pennsylvania is a great case. Like right now, if you pull probably any of the people that hunt our gun opener, which traditionally was 80% of our harvest, guys are like, I don't even hear a shot anymore. Places that I heard 200 shots on the opening day of gun season, I don't hear a shot. It's because all the guys are hunting in archery season with a crossbow. Right? 15 years ago, they couldn't. So when you went out on opening day, it was World War III.
Well, dude, that's got to be nationwide. And taxidermists are the best place to hear that for yourselves. It's just to ask when their business, like the numbers are probably the same. They used to say 80% of it was in December, it was gun season, and now 80 is flipped. 80% of it is
October, November.
Yeah.
So it's, and I'm not saying that's a wrong thing, but how has that affected your deer harvest and the population? They're definitely hunting more days. Like maybe there's not more hunters, but they're hunting 10 times the days because of the longer season they have available to them.
Yeah. Good question. 2011, I think it was, my brother set with a pitch counter in the deer blind opening day of gun season. By 7:30, I think he had counted 121 shots.
Wow.
So just over an hour. And then Matt, my business partner, he came out, born and raised in Virginia. He came out, and I think it was 2017. He hunted with us opening day, and his eyes were like this big around, where he's like, does it always sound like this?
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah. Hey, he's like, this sounds like a war zone.
Yep.
It's like, yeah. And this year, I think I heard, now weather was not as great, but I think I heard like 3 shots opening morning. It seems just like, it almost seems like people aren't hunting opening day as hard as they once were, but they're still hunting the whole season. Like they're getting out at different times of the year because of work schedule, or different times of the season because of work schedule, but they're still killing a good amount of deer.
Well, it's nothing to do with work schedule,
does.
Adam. It has everything to do with, that's the transition to crossbows. Maybe on a specific day, weather does have an influence there for sure, but that's been the progression.
I think the big question to ask is just, it's the 100 days of field, right? If we look back over the last 25 years in five-year increments, I bet we see a fairly steady hunter number 100%. Of days of field. And then at some point with the legalization of crossbows in most of the states, we see just or the advancing of the technology. In the case of Ohio, crossbows have always been legal, but as the 10 points and the Ravens and stuff all started really push it, the number of hunter days just went through the roof. Yeah. At the same time, we're decreasing numbers, but they're spending more time afield, which is why we're probably killing the same amount of deer.
Yeah.
So, those are the things that you look at. And why I say that is because the more time invested in a field that hunters are going to spend, the more they're willing to lease, buy, do all the things that we talked about that trump on the access side of things. So
yeah, it's not just days of field; it's like total footprint.
And I'm fine. I spend as many days of field as I possibly can. Right? It's not as many as I want, but like that's what it's just, we have to understand as a group of hunters and as state agencies that those opportunities are going to have massive repercussions on access, which, how long have we been talking about access being an issue? And I feel like everything that we're doing at a state level is only further making it tougher for access.
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing.
The progression of deer hunting and the deer management is almost pushing, it pushes the amount of access down, because you've got guys who, I want bigger deer, so immediately they're taking access away from other guys. Mm-hmm. And then that just crams them into, it's a whole compound effect. And I don't know if one way is better than the other.
I don't know.
Today's problems are that, and then 20 years ago, the problems were, hey, we saw one deer this weekend.
Exactly.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, man.
I'll take today's problems over 20 years ago problems every day of the week.
Yeah, 20 years ago in Pennsylvania, 96% of the bucks we killed were 1.5. Now it's like 52%. And we kill quite a bit of 2s and 3-year-olds.
There was a sweet spot in between though, like that 2004 to 2006.
I think the toughest part about like when you look into those time frames of like when did things really change, is like I never can, because there's so many moving pieces, like the changing of the weapon technology, changing in regulations and stuff. it's hard to put a thumb down exactly on like what was it that like broke us free. I mean, for sure, social media in general, like if we tie it back to mainstream, like social media was a huge piece of just, you know, the unveiling of a lot of stuff. Cell cams, massive.
It'd be interesting to see it on a map, like on a time frame. Those are the things you're mentioning: crossbows, social media, the internet in general, mapping softwares. And then if I didn't say it, like crossbow inclusion and
Kansas
all that.
is a perfect example. For however many years, I drew Kansas every year. And there were leftover tags. You could go over to the counter and buy a tag, right? In 2013 or 14, crossbows were made legal across the whole archery season. And within 2 years of that, you weren't drawn with 0 points.
And not only that, the places that we were hunting started to suck really bad. Like they were just getting pressured.
Because it had more people in it.
To the point where we left. We're leaving. We're abandoning where we've always hunted in Kansas to go somewhere else.
Yeah. And so in the case of Kansas, I assume their license revenue from non-residents blew through the roof, right? Because of the applications and stuff like that. But like the displacement we all just talked about, what did the number of hunters resident-wise do? I'm sure it decreased because they all started getting displaced. Most of those guys were like, I'm not, you know, it's not worth it anymore, whatever. So those are the offsets that at the end of the day, I'm sure they're looking at, but are they just looking at the bottom line number? Because if so, you know, maybe those non-resident tags supplemented it. I don't know.
It could be too, Jeremy, that not only that, but, you know, you say crossbows, but when you look out west, trying to put in for elk tags.
Oh yeah.
It's the same problem, and a crossbow doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong.
No, I get it.
Crossbows,
100%.
But at the same time, it's like, my gosh, what used to take 2 years to get drawn in Colorado now takes 4.
Yeah.
What is happening?
And that's the veil coming off of everything. That was foreign to, I didn't even know how to go hunt Ohio from Pennsylvania when I was growing up. Now I just get on my phone and I'm like, how do I draw for Wyoming?
Yeah, it's industry related. There, you know, I mean, there's definitely influence from like we talk about industry stuff. Guys are more aware of this stuff, and the tools are. It's all right there. You can go do it.
Super easy. Yeah,
and that's ultimately then that lead all the way back to my business where it's like, what can I control? Well, I bought 400 acres and I can control that.
Yeah.
And if I get the chance to control the extra 200 to the west, I'm going to do it. And that's where, public, private, I work exclusively on private ground. And so, I'm dealing with that. And then I see everybody's talking about public ground. I'm like, I'm really unaffected by it right now because I just work with landowners who want to improve the land that they have.
Are you seeing more clients?
That's what I get to do.
Yeah. Are you seeing more clients, Adam, looking to build onto their existing farm than buying other farms in general area?
The age-old debate: should I own a bunch of satellites or should I own one big one?
Yeah,
I've always been own one big one, just because I told you that where one of the hardest things I've learned is that neighborhood controls so much, and so if I own a 200 acre, the neighborhoods has a lot to do with what I'm doing. So it's just like you've heard it, everybody's heard it, but I just want to own. I don't want to own everything, just what touches me. And I mean, my clients take that to heart. And you say, well, that doesn't even make sense. Where's the line? Highways, roadways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Barriers. It's a roadway, and that's the boundary.
Yeah.
And so that's really, for me, that's it.
I agree.
Trying to control what you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think even just the aspect of putting resources into those properties, those small micro satellite farms, like you get fragmented very quickly in your work and your time involvement on a piece of property. So having it all together and as a contiguous piece, like, the more effort you can put into that contiguous piece, the better off you are versus I'm going to spend a couple hours here and then an hour here and then an hour there. Like that becomes really tough.
When I first started working for Glessinger, he owned a bunch of different farms. And it was like we kind of bounced around. And then he owned his one main track. And it was like getting a tractor down the road or going to plant food plots here and there is a nightmare for Casey as farm manager. And so it's like he started selling the satellites and buying the neighboring properties and consolidating. And I love his project because obviously there's big deer, but it's kind of for me, it's like the pinnacle of what we do, where it's like big farm, great neighborhood, great state with regulations, doing a lot of great habitat work. What can it produce? And like the first year I worked there, I was like, man, the habitat around here, driving around, I've been on these farms. The habitat's not as great as one would think just because of the amount of giants. So we're thinking 220s, but in reality, and he would tell you, I told you this, or told him this, but I said, in reality, I don't know why we can't think 250s. A 250-inch deer, if habitat is in check and you're hunting it correctly, why couldn't we grow a 250? And I mean, it sounds very snobby, but it's like, it's not, because it's not reality for me, but I'd like to at least know what the pinnacle is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And those are the situations that
we saw
have
the deer
the
that
opportunity.
It
was 247 or whatever.
Yeah, there it was. There was your proof.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a big one, man. I think that is a one that everybody that is vested in the management aspect wants to know, even if it's not realistic to them, what is the pinnacle? And then bring it back into your home court and say, okay, what's the pinnacle for me here? You know,
Yeah.
It's good to know that those opportunities are out there. Like, just whether or not, like, surely it's probably not something you get to do every year, but if once in your life you get to go to an Iowa or a Kansas or whatever, Illinois, Missouri, Canada, and experience like 180 plus inch deer in like prime habitat, it's just like, it'll change you forever. You know what I mean? It's like, there's just nothing like that.
Yeah.
And it's not realistic to think that, hey, I'm going to come back to Pennsylvania and recreate this on an every year basis type of a thing, you know? So.
Yeah. And because I just see people working with people all over the country. It's like, what are they doing in Southern Iowa? And I'm like, well, there's a lot more than just, they own a big track.
Yeah.
And they don't let anybody else kill young deer. Like, there's a lot more that goes into it. And one of those, I've said this one a lot, that for whatever reason in Southern Iowa, the landscape just kicks out giants, where it's like, oh, he's 3.5 and he's a pretty good deer. And all of a sudden at 5.5, he's humongous.
Yeah.
And we one lunged him, and the next year he comes back and he's still humongous.
Yeah. And
then in the Ozarks, I've got a great 4.5-year-old. He looks healthy, and all of a sudden he comes in limping on a trail camera and he's dead 2 weeks later. It's like, you twisted your ankle and you die.
Yeah, you die.
Like, why can you not survive like they do in Southern Iowa?
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, I like seeing the pinnacle, although it's unrelatable to most of us. God bless those guys for getting into that part of the world before any of us were looking, and they were buying it cheap. My hat's off to you. I'll continue staying in the Ozarks and doing my best.
Yeah.
It's fun, man, because
I was going to show you guys this. You've been talking. I wasn't even planning this, but
wow.
That's an Ozark. That was on the place that my brother and I bought. We could lease it before. And this deer was there in 2019, 193 and change.
Holy crap. So they exist, man. That's the thing, is like, if there's anything encouraging about that, and like it just depends on the day you catch me. Today I could be like optimistic me, and I'm like, man, I'm going to have some 150 to 160 inch 4-year-olds on this Kentucky farm. Tomorrow I could be like, I've got 3 4-year-olds, and it's like, I probably won't even see them. They're going to die. Like, it just, that's the way that it swings. But when you have something or you see something like that, and you're like, it can happen. A point, it's not.
It's a mental game, dude. Just like in the season, you got to maintain, like, optimism is probably one of the most effective tools at killing big deer.
Well, what I was to say is the Iowa guys kind of get on our case about it, but it's like, there's a point of me where I'm like, I'm happy I don't live in Iowa, because when I go and see that pinnacle, or I achieve a pinnacle where I'm at, it's like, it is a special, special day. I'm sure it is special to those guys, but when you're in it all the time and that's the expectation, it's like, where do you go from there?
You're just playing in
nowhere.
Different league.
I laugh. I've worked around Mark Dury's hometown, which is south of St. Louis.
Yep.
And it's like, several years ago, I talked to him. He was like, ever hunt back home? Oh, no, absolutely not. Why would I? Once you hunt up there, why would you ever go?
That's it.
Many other places.
That's it.
And For us, that deer, that one I just showed you, he was the first deer that I genuinely knew made it to 5.5.
Yep.
And he was about he was under 120 as a 3.5-year-old. He was right around 140 as a 4-year-old. And then at 5.5, he blew up to a 193.
Wow.
And it was like, is it, there's a lot that goes into it, but what is the easiest thing to control if you're a landowner? Just say, well, don't shoot him at 4.5. Let's let him get to 5.
Yeah.
Now we can control that. We can't control what the neighbors do, but that deer was like, man, let's just see what happens. And
awesome.
We've had a couple deer make it 5.5, and you're like, man, they can be big, but getting a deer to 5.5 is the ultimate challenge.
It's so hard, man.
I think that's where we're at, right? Well, dude, this deer right here is, we believe this deer is 4.5, and we passed this one on November. 20 minutes before I passed him, I heard the neighbor shoot at him twice with their gun. It was during gun season. So by the grace of God, this thing, made it through. And we don't know. We don't know what he'll do as a 5-year-old, but I think that's, in our minds, at least for that Illinois farm, that's kind of the goal.
Yeah, 5.
I don't know if we can hold out much longer than 5, or if there's, a point to, but that's the goal.
Yeah. I think people with the big deer, I get asked the question, why Southern Iowa was so special. And it's like, I've got to meet some of the locals through NRCS that were born and raised there. And it's like, not that many people hunt.
No.
We're all crop farmers, cattle farmers. And it was just like, there was already age structure.
Yep.
And then these guys came in and bought big tracts. They didn't have to endure the years of growing age structure. It was already there. Yeah. And then you put all your buddies and other people that have the same goals. And now we have megas. And outside of EHD or a neighborhood completely being sold and bought by rednecks from the South who are going to whack every young one, it's always going to be that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's those little pieces of encouragement that end up happening. I wish I had it here. I have one from Kentucky, like in the mountains of eastern Kentucky, that could have been a 2-year-old, probably was 3, but regardless was like a mid-40s. And I mean, that was a deer this year. I was like, if that deer shows up as a 3 and or 4-year-old, we'll be like all over high 60s or 70s. Didn't show up, of course. But in my head this year, I'm like, he's going to show up as an absolute mega freak mountain deer. And it's just, I don't know what the recipes that put in, but the only one that you can control is I didn't kill him. So hopefully he made it another year.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I had a deer this year that showed up on me, triple beam. I've talked to Greg and Casey a lot about it, where it's like people who actually get to see triple beam, they're like, generally it's a 1-year deal. Like it's a deer that something happened on his pedicle and all of a sudden it blows up in triple beam. And then the next year he doesn't have it. And so it's like, kill it. I thought the deer was 4, but I'm like, man, he's a 170s class deer probably. So we got to kill him. And I hunted him 3 times or 2 times. 2 times. And no, 3. And he was just right there at the edge where it's like, he's close to daylighting. If he does daylight, I want to be there for the first time. November 1st, that week, I think it was a Thursday, we were looking at the weather and it's like, Thursday's the day he'll daylight if he's going to do it. My brother took off work, northwest wind. We got 1 stand option. He's there all the time. That's where we're going. That morning we checked my 7-month-old into the hospital with RSV. So cancel the hunt. That afternoon, he walked in front of the tree stand 20 minutes before dark.
That's how it goes, man.
And he died 2 days later by the neighbor. So it was a good neighbor. One of the neighbors where you're like, if somebody's going to kill him, I'm glad it's those guys. But at the same time, you're like, yeah.
Did you get your hands on him with that neighbor?
No, I haven't yet. No.
I'd just be curious to see if he was 4 and, the works at that point.
They told me he was 4. I've been trying to get the jawbone or at least look at it. But I got to see a ton of videos of him and I'm looking at his body. I'm like, man, there was another deer that I knew at least 6.5 that just dwarfed him. So I'm like, this deer is, all indications that he's 4.
We've been getting in the habit of sending all of ours. You've got your deer age stuff right there. Yep. We've been just, making sure we're pulling incisors and sending them off just as a double verification type of thing. And there's been most normal. Maybe my Ohio buck was a surprise, wasn't a surprise, but like,
yeah. Have any of them come back where you're like, that's not what I thought.
my Ohio buck.
What you thought he was 4 and he was 5?
Well, no, I thought in the summertime I thought he was 5. And so he was one of the deer that I was like, I'm going to kill this deer. And then when I started to see him in September, like he looked thin. And I had picked, the thing was I had history with him. So I had him in 22, 23, and obviously in 24. I guessed him in the summertime. I said, well, he must have been a 3-year-old in 22. He's 5 this year. Then when I saw him in the fall and when I killed him, I was like, maybe he was only 2 in 22 and he's 4 this year. And I kind of went with that just because of his body more than anything.
Yeah.
And when I sent that incisor off, it came back as 5.5. So I was like, awesome. Like that's what I hoped he was, you know, but it was just the body size. He actually had like a 3-year-old body. He looked like a racehorse basically, but
yeah. I've had a couple of clients that have sent him off and they're like, I swear I've had this deer on camera for 40 years and they're telling me he was only 5.5. And I swear that he was older than that. And that's why I go back to like having history with deer is so beneficial because just shooting in the dark, 9 times out of 10, we're wrong.
Yeah.
Well, even those teeth analysis, they're not 100%.
No, it's like 67 or something like that.
Is it that low?
Okay. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a sure thing.
Yeah, no, it's pretty low, especially the more south you go.
I remember seeing, I can't remember who it was, somebody with a pretty large platform on Instagram talking about a deer they'd sent off, and they're like, here's the pictures, and it's like you look at it and you're like, sure enough, that deer is 7.5. I would say I'd put a lot of money on it, and they said it came back as 5.5.
Yeah.
Interesting, but
yeah,
it's still better than handing it over to your neighbor saying, how old do you think that deer is?
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I'd take our history over a tooth analysis any day.
The history, having all of that is the key, right? And I mean, that's a tough one, right? To see like that deer. Again, I had it in 22. Clearly wasn't a 1-year-old, right? Knew that. So 2 or 3 would have been my guess on that deer. I went 3, which is what the age said. But if you looked at that deer's body, you surely would have said, well, hell, people were like, that's a 3-year-old. And I'm like, no, because like I have him in 22. Like he's not a 125-inch 1-year-old.
It's like back when, for me, full message with kind of layman's and overcomplicating things is, if you remember the Quality Whitetails magazine, they would post a deer on there, and then they'd have all these biologists, and they were always different. You know,
I know.
It wasn't, and it's like, here's these guys that look at deer all the time, and they all can't agree.
I know.
And so then you have a guy who's frustrated with himself and goes, I know I shouldn't have shot that deer. He was 3 when looking back. I was like, dude, like you got to give yourself some grace here. Like these are wild animals, free range deer. Things happen.
Yeah. Which we beat up on cell cameras, but that's the one thing that has saved a lot of our butts by being able to sit there and like study a deer from multiple images, like right there to be like,
oh yeah. Well, it takes a lot of the guessing out of it. It is funny though how they'll deceive you. That wide 3-year-old in Illinois this year was a good example of that. We had pictures of this deer and not a whole lot of history that we could recall, and we're just like, it looks 4. And I mean, we're just like, hey, just everything about him looks 4. You know, nice wide, 100 mid-30s deer maybe. And the second I saw him in person, I was like, ooh, like, he's just not doing it for me. I was like, I think he's 3. You know, compared to, I think in the same day I had this deer walk under. I'm like, he wasn't that.
Yeah.
And so we were just able to come to the conclusion there, basically. But that is a huge advantage of just trail cameras in general. I would say especially cell cameras, but it's just to not have to be worried about like, what is he? It's way more, who is he, you know, and then it just makes the decision process that much simpler.
That's where, for me, with the cell cameras, I might be a little bit different perspective than you guys, just from the standpoint of what I've gathered here is I remember 2017, I was trying to go and pull all my trail camera cards. I had no cell cameras. And my wife was like, what are you doing? Every week or every 2 weeks, you're taking all day to go run trail cameras.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this isn't going to work.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, they have cell cameras. So I became a dealer for a couple companies. We just started adding a few every year and a few more every year. And now I look at it where it's like, yeah, I wholeheartedly use cell cameras just to keep myself out of trouble.
Yeah, saves you time, man. Yeah.
If I'm pulling cards, first of all, I've seen a lot of working on properties. I've seen it where guys are running trail cameras and they've got a handful of cell cameras and a whole lot of chip cards. I'm like, how often do you run your cameras? About every 2 weeks. And I'm like, so you drive the entire place and walk in? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh gosh, that's a problem.
It's a lot of pressure.
You know, you're all over this place. And every time it's like, who cares the wind? Just go run the cameras. So it's like, dial it back. I'd rather you have less cameras and they be cell cameras than a whole bunch of cameras and they be pull card cameras.
For sure.
Yeah, most of mine, like last year on my properties, my main properties, I pulled back to like 2, maybe.
Yeah.
And it was, I just had SD cards, but I didn't check. There were some of those SD card cameras I didn't check all season. Like they just sat, and there were other ones that were by a stand that when if I went in and hunted, I pulled. Like I killed my Ohio buck, I pulled that card and was sitting in the stand looking, and I'm like, okay, he's been here, several days. It's warm today, but I don't know. And then I killed him. But yeah, and it was more so just from, I don't know, like there was part of me that yearned for the mystery a bit, I guess. Of like,
I get it.
And the fact that I find myself chasing my own tail with cell cam pictpictures sometimes and talking myself out of hunts and but from an efficiency side, especially I'm in the same boat with the kids, no brainer. Like, I mean,
no doubt.
I don't have to go and, check cards every week because especially when you get into the heat of October and November, it's like, if I'm not out there every 3 or 4 days, that information is practically useless for that season.
Correct. Exactly. And that's where, for me, is like, I've been pretty successful over the last few years of killing a deer in less than 10 days, where it's like, I hunted 7 days and I killed the one I was after. I hunted 4 days and I killed the one I was after. I hunted 1 day and I killed the one I was after. It's like, for me, as having these young kids and they still think I'm the coolest dad in the world, I'm going to embrace it and spend as much time with them as possible. And then maybe hunt more when they think I'm the dumbest person in the world when they're teenagers. But ultimately, right now it's like, I'm going to spend my time wisely, and the trail cameras, I rely on that a lot. And that's you yearn for the day of that mystery. I think of a property that I'd love to own that has no food plots, and all I've done is just straight natives. There's nothing that I've not added any non-native screens or food plots, and all I've done is just natural management with the native ecosystem and see what I could do. No trail cameras, just as primitive as possible outside of carrying a stick bow. I wonder what that'd
interesting.
be like.
Do you think that would rival? I mean,
no,
I don't think it would either.
I don't think so. And I'm very much a native landscape enthusiast. So I get put into some camps, or I go on places to speak at events where it's like, these people are not necessarily hunters. They're okay with hunting, but they're way more into the native restoration.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, I mentioned food plots and they're like, oh, well, and I remember we had this debate on social media. If you had 400 acres, no food plots, all natives, 400 acres, all natives, but you've done some food plots, are they going to rival each other? I'm like, no, they're not. This guy's going to win.
Yeah. Every time.
He's got the food plots.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, I guess I can see your point, but as long as you're not sitting in it over a blind. And I'm like, oh no, I'm going to be in a blind.
I know.
Like,
we're going to be in a blind.
I don't slave all the way through the fall running a chainsaw and killing stuff to then go freeze my tail off in a tree stand. Like, I'm going to enjoy blind too.
Yeah. I do think there's at least here, and I know not all public is built the same, but like some of the big woods we have here in Pennsylvania, like last year I spent a lot of time scouting and hunting, and there was a purity of it of like, I went in, found big rubs in a scrape, and I'm like, I'm just gonna sit here, like, and I don't know.
Well, dude, for us, the Dakotas and mule deer, we get kind of a taste of that, where it's just badlands and big open country.
There are
There's
no scoutings, there are no cameras. It's just we show up and we find them. Yeah.
I did that probably like 2018. I went and hunted. Matt was a little discouraged. He's like, I'm just tired. Let's go. He had a lease and he was frustrated with it. He's like, let's go hunt some public ground. So we packed our bags and we went to National Forest in southern Missouri, actually a wilderness area. And we hiked in, and I just sat there in disgust all day because it was chocked full of invasives.
Oh, yeah.
It lacked fire. So this eastern red cedar, it was just eastern red cedar everywhere. There's pigs all over. I passed a 120-inch buck, which for that part of the world was, I probably should have shot him. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not going to lower my standards just because I changed my hunting opportunity one day. But it was like, there was that side where it's like, I have no idea what's here. Like, it could be a giant. I don't know. I'm going to walk in 3 miles and see what happens. But in reality, I just sat there going, I wish I could manage this place because this is disgusting.
Yeah. That sounds right.
Yeah.
Well, dude, if somebody wants to get a hold of you for like land, to book you for a consult or anything like that, you want to share some of your contact information?
Yeah. Appreciate that. We could do, look us up on social media, Land and Legacy. If you look us up at landandlegacy.tv, but quickest way is email at info@landandlegacy.tv, and you can get a hold of us, and we can get on your schedule and help you on your farm.
And podcasts just all on the normal platforms?
Normal platforms, search Land and Legacy. I mean, we've done it now since 2017. We did 2 a week, so there's a lot. There's like over 600 episodes. So
do you have any kind of like a strategy to your travel pattern? Like if I would ask specifically about like Ohio or the Northeast, do you have that kind of penciled in for a certain time of the year or anything?
I wish it would make life a lot easier, but it's normally when people email in and we start, okay, we got this guy, and he emails in. A lot of our consults get booked October through December for the January, February, March. So it's like, okay, they're coming in. And like most of the time, if it's going to Pennsylvania, we try to maneuver them around, but it doesn't always work that way. So it's just here, there, and everywhere.
Okay, cool. So, well, I know Jeremy and I we respect Greg a lot, and he really spoke highly of stuff you guys have discussed over the years on his farms and stuff. And so maybe we'll get you out here at some point.
Yeah, no, I think, who knows? I'm around Ohio and Kentucky. I definitely have an event in May, I think, or June in Kentucky. So
okay,
I'm not too far away from you guys.
Cool.
Awesome.
At some point.
Well, good deal, dude. Well, we appreciate you spending some time with us this morning. Hopefully you stay safe with the rest of the storms today and flooding this weekend, and there'll be a lot of people listening to this probably experiencing the same, and then of course, like anything, we'll go from too much rain to no rain probably by the end of the spring and the summer. So
always dealing with the weather variables.
That's it. So, but hold on 1 second here while we sign you off, and man, appreciate everything.
Sounds good.
Thanks, buddy. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Lone Wolf Custom Gear.
Man, Jared, we are tree stand fanatics, and I think the one thing that we have learned over all these years is to kill big bucks, we got to be mobile. We've been hunting out of Lone Wolves for many years, the original Lone Wolf, and then obviously with the custom gear stuff, we're using the 0.5 and the 0.75. Yeah. And the one thing that we talked about is like, what if there were no cables? Here we are.
I really just don't know how you can beat it, frankly. But, a lot of that came, too, from a relationship that we've built with the DeQuistos. We've had both Cody and Andre on the podcast a few times. The passion for hunting, the outlook on the sport and stuff, I think is eye to eye with how we look at it. Everything that has gone into building this brand and to building these tree stands is something that we want to be a part of.
This is the 40th anniversary of these guys creating tree stands that have been critical to how we hunt whitetail deer today. If you look over the past, you'll see Andre's designs being implemented across so many stands over the years. Such a cool thing, but really has changed the way that we all hunt whitetail deer from above now.
Right now, you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, to get 7% off anything on the entire website. Be the Lone Wolf.
I haven't seen Adam in a while. I'm trying to think when the last time we talked. Maybe at like an ATA show or something.
Probably would have been like a whitetail gathering or whatever.
Probably one of our whitetail gatherings. Yeah, that makes sense. So, yeah, really cool to see, him. It was funny. I was like, he said something about Matt being his brother-in-law. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I don't know if I knew that either.
Yeah, so that's cool. And, those guys have a great thing going. I mean, he's probably being subtle about it, but like that lifestyle of a consultant, especially with a young family, is
Oh yeah, I mean that's
tough.
months on the road.
Yeah, and if you're not on the road, you're not making money. Unfortunately, like you got to
get on properties.
That's the way it goes. So, yeah, man, we appreciate Adam taking some time in between the storms to talk to us down there, and definitely would recommend him and Matt from a consulting standpoint. If you're looking to have somebody come out and walk your property, give those guys a call, especially from a habitat side. I mean, I think we've talked about it before, is like the difference between habitat consultants and hunting consultants, and there's guys that cover both spectrums there, but can't kill them if you don't have them. So
it's so much fun talking to consultants, people, just because they get to spend time on so many different properties, and they're like, as much time as you and I spend in the woods and like, focusing on strategy and management stuff on our own properties, it's just like you just can't learn at the rate or at the scale that you would on as many properties as all those guys, seem to get on. So they're a huge resource, and it's fun for even if we don't jive with strategy and stuff, or maybe we do things a little bit differently. It's really helpful to have in the bank.
Yeah, no, I think it's big, and I mean I like especially from the consulting side. I mean, obviously those guys and Sturgis and Higgins, all these guys cover a lot of different states, but you kind of see where their their comfortability or their strengths are in places. Like from this conversation, Adam's very confident in guys that have bigger timber and are managing to create cover and habitat and add food into that standpoint. I think that's probably very different from a Higgins or Sturgis, who seem to be working with more farms and open type ground. So it's kind of neat to see that and understand that, like, when you have somebody come in to the property, like, you want somebody that's going to be able to look at what you have and, maybe have more experience or more familiarity or more passion even. Like, it seems like Adam's probably more passionate about those styles of property. That's what I would look for, at least. So, cool to see those guys doing well, and appreciate Adam coming on. And you guys listening to episode 245.
Isn't it funny how sometimes we just skip I forget that part in the beginning there, so I'll do it now. We appreciate you guys listening. Yeah. Thank you for being here, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Yep. We drop these episodes every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. So if you enjoyed this one, that's when you can get them. If you've wrote us on Instagram or DM or our website form, those are the two that we try to keep up with. Appreciate you reaching out. We get behind on those sometimes, but
bear with us.
Yeah, it's there. So we've got some merch and stuff on the website. We've got some Nalgene, some hats.
We're gonna do some new stuff
bottles,
here coming
hoodies.
out.
Yeah, we're working on some new merch for you guys. So a lot of you have bought that. That's cool for us.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Appreciate that. And other than that, thanks for being here.
Yeah, and we appreciate you watching episode 245 with Adam Keith, and we'll see y'all next week.
Later.
Take me